The door locked from the outside. Clara Whitmore pressed her palms against the carved oak, listening to her husband's footsteps fade down the corridor. 24 hours married, 24 hours a duchess, and already a prisoner. Behind her, the wedding dress pooled on the floor like spilled milk. Expensive, ruined, forgotten. The Ashford Manor stretched silent around her, 70 rooms of cold marble and colder silence. Through the window, London glittered with gaslight and gossip, already whispering about the girl who sold herself to save her father's debts. She'd thought marriage would be her salvation. She was wrong. Want to see how Clara survives her gilded cage? Stay until the end, hit that like button, and comment what city you're watching from. This story gets wild. The wedding had been beautiful in the way funerals are beautiful. Expensive flowers masking something dead underneath. Clara stood in the drawing room of Ashford House 3 days after becoming a duchess, staring at a portrait of Victor's mother. The woman in the painting looked severe, jewels dripping from her throat like icicles. Her eyes seemed to follow Clara around the room, judging. "You're standing wrong." Clara spun. Victor stood in the doorway, still wearing his riding coat, mud on his boots. She hadn't heard him come in. She never heard him. He moved through the house like smoke. "I beg your pardon?" "Your posture." He gestured vaguely at her spine. "A duchess doesn't slouch. My mother would have had a stick tied to your back within the first hour." Heat crawled up Clara's neck. "Your mother isn't here to—" "Fortunately." He crossed to the sidebar, poured himself whiskey, though it wasn't yet noon. "She'd have sent you back to your father by now. Bad investment, she'd say. Too young, too common, too—" He trailed off, but Clara heard the unspoken word hanging between them. "Poor." "I'm doing my best," she said quietly. Victor laughed, a sound without humor. "Your best?" "Yes, I'm sure you are." He drained the glass in one swallow. "Mrs. Hallowell will instruct you on household management. You're to review the weekly accounts, approve the menus, receive callers on Tuesdays and Fridays between 2 and 4. No opinions on politics, no comments on society gossip, and for God's sake, learn to smile without looking terrified." "I'm not terrified." His eyes, pale gray like a winter sky, finally met hers. For a moment, something flickered there, almost curiosity, almost regret. "Then you're a better actress than I gave you credit for." He left without another word. Clara waited until his footsteps faded before allowing herself to breathe. Her hands were shaking. She pressed them flat against her skirts, silk the color of mourning doves, purchased with Ashford money, tailored to Ashford specifications. Everything about her now belonged to him, everything except the fury building behind her ribs. Mrs. Hallowell appeared at 4 o'clock sharp, a woman built like a churchyard gate, narrow and forbidding. "Your Grace," she didn't curtsy. "His Grace has instructed me to begin your education." Education. As if Clara were a child learning her letters, not a grown woman running a household. "I appreciate your time, Mrs. Hallowell, but I've managed a home before. My father's estate required—" "Your father's estate." Mrs. Hallowell's mouth pursed like she'd bitten into spoiled fruit. "Had 3 servants and a cook who doubled as a laundress. Ashford House employs 42 staff across 3 properties. The weekly accounts alone exceed your father's annual income." The numbers hit like a slap. Clara had known Victor was wealthy. Everyone knew that. The Ashford fortune came from mining interests in Cornwall and shipping contracts with the East India Company. But she hadn't understood the scale of it. 42 people depending on her decisions. Thousands of pounds flowing through accounts she'd never seen. "Then I'd better learn quickly," Clara said. Something shifted in Mrs. Hallowell's expression. Not warmth. The woman seemed constitutionally incapable of warmth, but perhaps the faintest grudging respect. "Indeed, Your Grace. Shall we begin with the wine cellar inventory?" They worked until sunset. Clara's head spun with numbers. Cases of Burgundy and Bordeaux, wheels of imported cheese, standing orders with grocers and butchers and fishmongers. The household ran with mechanical precision, every penny accounted for, every servant's duty outlined in exacting detail. Victor's hand was everywhere in it. His preferences, his standards, his rigid control. "Does His Grace review these personally?" Clara asked, studying a particularly detailed notation about the proper temperature for storing champagne. "Every week," Mrs. Hallowell said. "His Grace trusts nothing to chance." Or to anyone else, Clara thought. That night, she dined alone. A footman served 7 courses to an empty table while Clara sat in state, forks scraping against porcelain in the echoing silence. Victor had sent word he'd be dining at his club. Again. She made it through the soup and the fish before her composure cracked. "This is absurd," she said aloud. The footman's expression never changed. "Your Grace, serving a banquet to one person, it's wasteful." "It's tradition, Your Grace." Tradition, that word was a cage all its own. Clara stood abruptly. "Please inform cook that tomorrow I'll take a simple supper in my rooms, and tell the staff they may keep whatever isn't served." The footman's eyes widened fractionally. "Your Grace, His Grace prefers—" "His Grace isn't here." The words came out sharper than she'd intended. Clara softened her tone. "I appreciate the effort, truly, but I won't sit here being served like royalty while eating alone. It's lonely." She regretted the confession the moment it left her lips. Servants talked. By morning, the entire household would know the new Duchess was weak, sentimental, lonely, but the footman only bowed. "As you wish, Your Grace." The whispers started within a week. Clara heard them in the market when she insisted on accompanying the cook to select produce. A duchess shopping like a common housewife, how peculiar. She heard them in the calling cards piling up on the silver tray in the entrance hall. Invitations declined because Victor couldn't be bothered to escort her, because appearing alone would be worse than not appearing at all. She heard them loudest in the silence between her and her husband. They lived like strangers sharing a hotel. Victor kept a separate bedroom, left before dawn, returned after dark. When their paths did cross, in hallways at the occasional breakfast, he was coldly polite. Nothing more. Clara had expected distance. She'd known this wasn't a love match, but she hadn't expected to feel quite so erased. "You're settling in well," her father wrote in his first letter. "I trust His Grace is treating you with the respect due your station." Clara stared at those words for a long time. Her father had gambled away their estate, drunk away her dowry, and sold her to Victor Ashford to clear his debts. And now he asked if she was being treated with respect. She burned the letter in her fireplace and didn't reply. 3 weeks into her marriage, Clara encountered the widow. She'd been arranging flowers in the morning room, one of the few rooms in the house that felt remotely welcoming, when she heard Victor's voice in the entrance hall. Not alone. A woman's laughter, low and knowing, echoed through the corridors. Clara's hand stilled on the roses. "You're terrible, Victor. Absolutely terrible." "I've been called worse." His voice held amusement Clara had never heard directed at her. Footsteps approached. Clara had just enough time to register her own reflection in the window. Plain morning dress, hair pinned too severely, flour on her sleeve from helping cook with the breakfast bread, before they appeared in the doorway. The woman was stunning. Raven hair piled in artful curls, emerald silk gown cut to display advantages Clara didn't possess, diamonds glittering at her throat. She looked like everything Clara wasn't, confident, sophisticated, entirely at ease. "Oh." The woman's smile didn't reach her eyes. "You have company." Victor's expression shuddered. "Clara, this is Mrs. Helena Voss." "Helena, my wife." The way he said wife, like a technicality, a minor inconvenience, made Clara's stomach turn. "Your Grace." Helena's curtsy was perfect, mocking. "How domestic. Arranging flowers yourself?" "I find it calming," Clara said evenly. "How sweet." Helena turned to Victor, effectively dismissing Clara from the conversation. "Darling, about the shipment we discussed. My solicitor reviewed the contracts." "We'll discuss it in my study," Victor interrupted. He glanced at Clara. Guilt? Annoyance? Before gesturing Helena toward the hallway. "Excuse us." They left Clara standing among the roses, thorns still caught in her sleeve, invisible again. That night, Clara did what she'd been avoiding. She asked the staff about Helena Voss. The maid who helped her undress went stiff. I couldn't say, Your Grace. You could. You choose not to. Clara met the girl's eyes in the mirror. Please, I'm not asking for gossip. I need to understand what I'm dealing with. The maid, Sarah, barely older than Clara, wavered. It's not my place. Sarah. Clara turned from the mirror. I'm alone here. Completely alone. If there's something I should know, something that affects my position in this household, I need you to tell me. Sarah's resolve crumbled. Mrs. Voss was His Grace's companion before the marriage. Some say she expected to become the next Duchess herself. Ice settled in Clara's chest. And after the marriage? She hasn't gone away, Your Grace. Sarah's voice dropped to barely a whisper. They still meet. Everyone knows. Everyone except Clara. She dismissed Sarah with thanks and a coin the maid tried to refuse. Then she sat at her dressing table, staring at her own reflection until the candles burned low. A companion. A mistress. A woman who belonged in Victor's life in ways Clara never would. The rage she'd been suppressing finally broke through. She'd been sold to save her father's reputation. Fine. She'd married a man who saw her as a transaction. Fine. But she would not be humiliated. Not publicly. Not in her own household. Not without a fight. Clara stood, smoothed her nightdress, and made a decision. If Victor wanted a duchess in name only, she'd give him one. But she'd be a duchess on her terms. She'd master this household, earn the staff's loyalty, and build something here that was hers alone. And if Helena Voss thought she could waltz through Ashford House like she owned it, she'd learn otherwise. The transformation started small. Clara began rising before dawn, meeting with Mrs. Hallowell before breakfast to review every detail of household operation. She learned which merchants cheated on weights, which servants had sick family members needing extra wages, which rooms needed repair, and which traditions could be quietly retired. She started eating breakfast with the senior staff, an unheard-of breach of protocol that scandalized Mrs. Hallowell, until she realized Clara was using the time to solve problems before they reached Victor's attention. The stable master needs additional funds for veterinary care, Clara announced one morning, passing the marmalade to the head gardener. I've approved it from the household discretionary account. Mrs. Hallowell's eyebrows climbed. His Grace typically reviews all. His Grace is too busy to be bothered with a lame horse. The expenditure is reasonable and necessary. Unless you disagree? The housekeeper's lips twitched. No, Your Grace, I don't disagree. Word spread. The new Duchess wasn't just a pretty ornament. She had a mind, a backbone, and surprisingly, a talent for management. Within a month, the household ran smoother than it had in years. Disputes were settled before they escalated. Suppliers who'd been padding bills found themselves renegotiated. Staff who'd been overworked were reassigned. The ones who'd been stealing were quietly dismissed. Victor noticed. You fired the under-butler, he said one evening, cornering her in the library where she'd been reviewing accounts. Clara didn't look up. He was stealing silver, 6 pieces over 3 months. Did you want me to ignore it? I want you to consult me before dismissing staff. Why? You're never here. She met his eyes calmly. Someone has to run this household, Victor. You made it clear that someone isn't you. His jaw tightened. You're overstepping. I'm doing my job. The job you outlined the first day. Manage the household, approve the menus, receive callers. Unless you'd like to resume doing it yourself? Silence stretched between them. Victor looked exhausted, Clara realized. Shadows under his eyes, tension in his shoulders. Whatever business consumed his days and nights was taking its toll. The accounts, he said finally. You've reorganized them. They were inefficient. Cross-referencing expenses took hours. I created a new system. He paused, something like admiration crossing his face. Actually, quite clever. Clara's heart did something stupid and painful. Thank you. Don't let it go to your head. But his tone lacked its usual edge. Mrs. Hallowell says you've been eating with the staff. Is that a problem? It's irregular. So is serving 7-course dinners to an empty table, but you didn't seem concerned about that. Victor almost smiled. Almost. Fair point. He turned to leave, then stopped. Clara, the dismissal. You were right to do it. I should have noticed the theft myself. The admission cost him. She could see it in the rigid set of his spine. You have other concerns, she said quietly. I understand that. Do you? He glanced back, expression unreadable. I wonder. After he left, Clara sat in the silence, her hands trembling slightly. It was the longest conversation they'd had since the wedding, and somewhere in those few minutes, something had shifted. Not warmth, not affection, but perhaps recognition, the acknowledgement that she existed, that she mattered. It was pathetic how much that small moment meant. Clara closed the account books and headed to bed, hating herself for hoping. The invitation arrived on a Tuesday. Lady Pemberton's annual ball, the event of the season, the place where reputations were made and destroyed in equal measure. Every notable family in London would attend, including, Clara suspected, Helena Voss. You'll need a new gown, Victor said, examining the invitation at breakfast. Something impressive. Lady Pemberton will scrutinize every detail. You're planning to attend? Clara tried to keep the surprise from her voice. Victor avoided social events like plague. We're attending, together. He set down the invitation with finality. People are talking. About us. About the marriage. We need to present a united front. United, Clara repeated. That's an interesting word for strangers who happen to share a surname. His eyes snapped to hers. We're not strangers. Aren't we? Victor, I know more about your wine cellar preferences than I know about you. That's how aristocratic marriages work, Clara. Surely your father explained. My father explained that I was a commodity being traded to clear his debts. He didn't bother with the finer details. The words hung between them, brutal and honest. Victor's expression did something complicated. That's not... I didn't mean for you to feel like a commodity. Then what am I? What is this? She gestured between them. You lock yourself away, you disappear for days, you bring your mistress to our home and expect me to smile through it. What exactly did you think I'd feel? Helena isn't my mistress. Everyone says otherwise. Everyone is wrong. He stood abruptly, chair scraping. She's a business associate, nothing more. A business associate who calls you darling and laughs at your jokes and looks at me like I'm something stuck to her shoe. You're jealous, Clara laughed, sharp and bitter. Jealous? Of what? Your attention? You'd have to give me attention first for me to be jealous of someone else receiving it. No, Victor, I'm not jealous. I'm angry. There's a difference. She stood too, drawing herself up to her full height, still 6 inches shorter than him, but her fury made her feel taller. I left everything behind for this marriage. My home, my friends, what little freedom I had. I came here willing to try, to be a good wife, to build something. And you've given me nothing, not respect, not honesty, not even basic courtesy. So forgive me if I'm not thrilled about play acting as your devoted duchess for Lady Pemberton's entertainment. Victor stared at her like he'd never seen her before. You're right, he said finally, voice low. You're absolutely right. I've been... He ran a hand through his hair, destroying its careful styling. My behavior has been inexcusable. I apologize. Clara nearly sat back down in shock. Victor Ashford didn't apologize. To anyone. For anything. The ball, he continued. Attend with me. Let me try to do better. Please. The please was what undid her. Fine, Clara said, but I'm choosing my own gown. Without your input. His mouth quirked. I wouldn't dare interfere. The dressmaker arrived the next day. Madame Lisette, who'd dressed half the aristocracy and had opinions about all of them. The new Duchess Ashford. Madame Lisette circled Clara like a general surveying troops. Everyone is talking about you. I'm sure they are. They say you're plain. Clara's spine stiffened. They're idiots. Madame Lisette waved dismissively. You're not plain. You're unfinished. There's a difference. Good bones, excellent posture, intelligent eyes. We work with this. Sapphire silk, I think. Cut to emphasize your waist, your shoulders. Make them look at you and forget their insipid opinions. I don't want to look like Helena Voss. Madame Lisette's eyes gleamed. Ah, the widow. No, chérie. Mrs. Voss dresses like a woman trying too hard. You will dress like a woman who doesn't need to try. Much more powerful. Over the next week, Clara was poked, pinned, draped, and critiqued. Madame Lisette was a tyrant with fabric shears, but she delivered results. The gown was a masterpiece. Midnight blue silk that shimmered like deep water, cut daringly low across the shoulders, fitted to emphasize Clara's waist before flowing into a dramatic train. Subtle silver embroidery caught the light with every movement. "You look like a duchess," Sarah breathed when Clara tried it on. "A real one." Clara studied herself in the mirror. For the first time since arriving at Ashford House, she didn't recognize the scared girl staring back. This woman looked powerful, dangerous even. She liked it. The night of the ball arrived too quickly. Clara descended the stairs to find Victor waiting in the entrance hall, formal black tailcoat emphasizing his broad shoulders, hair slicked back, expression unreadable. He looked up as she approached. Froze. Clara. Just her name. But the way he said it, like a prayer, like an oath, made her pulse quicken. "Will I do?" She meant it lightly, but her voice came out breathless. "You'll do more than that." He offered his arm, and for once the gesture felt genuine. "You'll be the most stunning woman in the room." "You're required to say that. You're my husband." "I'm saying it because it's true." Their eyes met. Something electric passed between them. Not love, not yet, but potential. The faint possibility that this marriage might become something real. The carriage ride passed in charged silence. Clara watched London slide by through the window, gas lamps reflecting off rain-slicked streets, couples hurrying home from theaters and supper clubs. A city full of people living actual lives while she played dress-up in someone else's existence. "You're nervous," Victor observed. "I'm about to be inspected by everyone who matters in London society. Of course I'm nervous." "They'll love you. They'll judge me. There's a difference." Victor's hand found hers in the darkness. The contact sent shock through her entire arm. "Let them judge," he said quietly. "You're stronger than all of them combined. I've seen what you've done with the household, Clara. The way the staff respects you, the changes you've implemented. You're remarkable." She turned to stare at him. "You've noticed?" "I notice everything about you." The carriage stopped before she could respond. Footmen opened doors, hands appeared to help them down, and suddenly they were ascending marble steps into a blaze of light and music and overwhelming sensation. Lady Pemberton's ballroom glittered like a jewelry box, crystal chandeliers, gilded mirrors, hothouse flowers in massive arrangements. Hundreds of guests in their finest, all turning to stare as the butler announced, "His Grace the Duke of Ashford and Her Grace the Duchess of Ashford." Clara's grip on Victor's arm tightened. His hand covered hers, steadying, protective. "Breathe," he murmured. "I'm right here." They descended into the crowd. The first hour passed in a blur of introductions. Lord this and Lady that, compliments that felt like insults, questions designed to trap. Clara smiled until her face ached, curtsied until her knees protested, and kept her responses carefully neutral. "Your Grace, what a unique gown," one woman simpered. "So daring for someone so new to society." "Thank you," Clara replied sweetly. "I find that confidence is the best accessory. Don't you?" Victor's lips twitched. They moved through the crowd like dancers in a complicated ballet. Victor introducing her, Clara charming, both playing their roles perfectly. And slowly, Clara realized something. They worked well together. He anticipated when she needed rescue from tedious conversations. She smoothed over his brusque responses to questions he found invasive. They fit. "You're doing wonderfully," Victor said during a brief respite near the refreshment table. "I'm exhausted. 1 more hour, then we can leave. Promise?" "Promise." Then Helena Voss appeared. She materialized from the crowd in crimson silk, diamonds dripping from every available surface, smile sharp as broken glass. "Victor, how delightful!" Her eyes slid to Clara. "Your Grace, what an interesting gown." "Mrs. Voss," Clara's voice could have frozen wine. "How kind of you to notice." "Oh, one couldn't help but notice. You're quite the topic of conversation this evening." "Am I?" Helena leaned closer, voice dropping to a confidential purr. They're all wondering, you see, about the marriage, whether it's real or merely convenient. Victor went rigid beside her. Helena, it's a fair question, isn't it? Helena's smile never wavered. You two barely know each other, married in such haste, and Victor still conducting business with old friends. She trailed off meaningfully. The implication hung like poison gas. Clara felt every eye in the vicinity turn toward them. Whispers rippled outward. This was it, the moment Helena had been waiting for. A public scene that would cement Clara as the pathetic, unwanted wife. She could shrink, retreat, play the victim, or she could fight. Clara stepped forward, closing the distance between herself and Helena until they were nearly nose to nose. You're right, she said clearly. We married quickly, by arrangement, not romance. Everyone knows that. She raised her voice slightly, making sure the nearby eavesdroppers caught every word. But what you seem to misunderstand, Mrs. Voss, is that arranged marriages often make the strongest partnerships. They're built on mutual benefit, shared goals, and respect, not fleeting passion that burns out the moment something younger and shinier appears. Helena's smile froze. My husband and I, Clara continued, are building something lasting, something real. And if you're conducting business with him, I'm delighted. Business is business. But let's be very clear about what you are and aren't to this family. She let the words settle, watching Helena's face cycle through shock, rage, and finally calculation. How provincial, Helena managed. How practical, Clara corrected. Now, if you'll excuse us, I believe they're about to start the dancing. She took Victor's arm and walked away, heart hammering, knees weak, but head high. They made it 3 steps before Victor stopped, turned her to face him, and said, That was the most magnificent thing I've ever witnessed. I may have just made a powerful enemy. You destroyed her, publicly, perfectly. His eyes blazed with something Clara had never seen before. You're extraordinary. Victor, dance with me. What? Dance with me, right now, in front of everyone. Show them all exactly what kind of duchess you are. He pulled her onto the floor as a waltz began. His hand found her waist, hers rested on his shoulder, and suddenly they were spinning through a sea of jealous faces and whispered speculation. I didn't know you could dance, Clara said, breathless. There's a lot you don't know about me. Then tell me. Please. I'm tired of fighting shadows. Victor's expression softened. When we get home, I'll tell you everything, I promise. They danced 3 more waltzes, unheard of for a married couple, before Victor finally kept his word and took her home. The carriage ride back was different, charged with possibility. Clara's hand stayed in Victor's, and he didn't let go. At Ashford House, he walked her to her bedroom door and hesitated. Thank you, he said finally, for tonight, for defending our marriage, for being you. Victor, I'm not good at this, at feelings, at talking, at any of it, but you deserve better than I've given you, and I'm going to try. Starting tomorrow, I'm going to try. He kissed her hand, a gesture that should have felt formal but instead felt intimate, and left her standing in the hallway, heart racing, hope flickering dangerously in her chest. Clara entered her bedroom in a daze. Sarah helped her out of the gown, chattering about how all the servants were talking about the Duchess's triumph over that awful Voss woman. But Clara barely heard. She was thinking about Victor's eyes when he'd watched her face down Helena. The pride there. The heat. She was thinking about his promise. I'll tell you everything. She was thinking that maybe, just maybe, this marriage might become something worth fighting for after all. Outside her window, London slept. Inside Ashford House, something was shifting, something neither Clara nor Victor fully understood yet. The cage door was starting to open, but neither of them realized how many enemies were waiting to slam it shut again. Victor didn't come to breakfast. Clara sat alone at the table, the morning light streaming through windows that suddenly felt less oppressive, and waited. She'd barely slept, replaying every moment of the ball. Helena's venom, the crowd's shocked whispers, Victor's eyes when he'd pulled her onto the dance floor, and his promise, I'll tell you everything. But the chair across from her remained empty. By 10 o'clock, Mrs. Hallowell appeared with the household accounts and a carefully neutral expression. His Grace left before dawn, Your Grace. Business in Cornwall, the mines. The hope that had kept Clara awake all night curdled into something bitter. Of course he did. He left this. Mrs. Hallowell produced a sealed envelope. Clara took it with hands that wanted to tremble but refused. She waited until the housekeeper left before breaking the seal. Clara. Urgent matter at the wheel. Margaret Mine. Roof collapse. 3 men trapped. I'll return as soon as possible. Last night meant something. Don't doubt that. V. She read it 3 times, searching for warmth in the sparse words. Found only Victor's usual economy of emotion. Facts, necessities, nothing wasted on feeling. Except that last line. Don't doubt that. Clara folded the letter carefully and slipped it into her pocket. Then she stood, smoothed her skirts, and went to work. If Victor could vanish into his responsibilities, so could she. The rumors started that afternoon. Clara was in the still room, reviewing the herb inventory with Cook, when Sarah burst through the door, face flushed. Your Grace, you need to come. Now. What's happened? Lady Pemberton's lady's maid is in the kitchen. She's saying... Sarah glanced at Cook, then lowered her voice. She's saying terrible things. About you and His Grace. Clara's stomach dropped. What kind of things? That the marriage is a sham, that you trapped him, that he's already gone back to Mrs. Voss and left you behind. He's in Cornwall, Clara said evenly, dealing with a mine accident. That's not what she's telling everyone. Sarah's hands twisted in her apron. She says he's with her, that they left London together, that you're being made a fool of. The words hit like physical blows. Clara forced herself to breathe, to think. Where is this maid now? Kitchen, holding court, half the staff's listening. Clara moved before she could second-guess herself. She walked through the corridors with her spine straight and her head high, Sarah scrambling to keep pace. The kitchen fell silent when she entered, 20 pairs of eyes swiveling to watch, anticipating drama. The visiting maid stood by the fire, a sharp-faced woman in Lady Pemberton's livery, clearly enjoying her audience. Your Grace? The woman's curtsy was perfunctory, mocking. I was just sharing news from town. You were spreading lies in my household, Clara's voice cut like a blade. About my marriage, about my husband. I only repeat what I hear, Your Grace. If the talk troubles you, perhaps you should take it up with... With whom? With you? With Lady Pemberton? Clara stepped closer, dropping her voice to something soft and deadly. Let me be very clear. What happens between the Duke of Ashford and myself is none of your concern, none of Lady Pemberton's concern, and certainly none of the kitchen's concern. His Grace is in Cornwall, saving lives at his mine. If you'd like to malign his character by suggesting otherwise, I invite you to do so to his face when he returns. The maid's confidence faltered. I meant no offense. You meant every offense. You came here to humiliate me in front of my own staff, to undermine my authority, to spread poison, and I'm telling you it won't work. Clara turned to address the entire room. Anyone who has a problem with how I run this household, or how His Grace and I conduct our marriage, is welcome to seek employment elsewhere. I won't tolerate gossip, I won't tolerate disrespect, and I certainly won't tolerate anyone using my kitchen as a stage for petty cruelty. Silence. Absolute ringing silence. Then Cook cleared her throat. Well said, Your Grace. Mary, show this woman out. We have work to do. The maid fled. The staff dispersed, and Clara made it all the way to the wine cellar before her composure shattered. She sank onto a crate, hands shaking, breath coming in gasps. The cool darkness pressed around her like water. She'd won the confrontation, asserted her authority, but the damage was done. The rumors were out there now, spreading through London like infection. And Victor wasn't here to refute them. Last night meant something, but what if it didn't? What if she'd misread everything, the dances, the hand-holding, the warmth in his eyes? What if she was exactly what that maid had suggested, a naive girl being made a fool of? Your Grace? Clara looked up to find Mrs. Hallowell standing in the doorway, backlit by lamplight. Are you unwell? I'm fine. Clara stood, wiping her eyes quickly. Just needed a moment. Mrs. Hallowell descended the stairs, studying Clara with those sharp, assessing eyes. The staff is talking. Of course they are. about how you defended his grace, how you threw that vicious creature out on her ear. The housekeeper's mouth twitched. They're impressed. They're probably also wondering if the rumors are true. Some are. Most aren't. Mrs. Hallowell moved to stand beside Clara, her presence unexpectedly comforting. I've served this family for 30 years, Your Grace. I knew His Grace's father, his mother, watched Victor grow from a boy into a man, and I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looked at you last night. Clara's throat tightened. You were at the ball. I have eyes in every great house in London. The servants talk and I listen. Mrs. Hallowell's expression softened fractionally. His Grace is many things, cold, difficult, impossible to read. But he's not a liar. If he says last night meant something, it meant something. Then why did he leave? Because 3 men are buried in rock in Cornwall, and he's the only one with authority to order the kind of rescue that might save them. Because he takes his responsibilities seriously, sometimes too seriously. The housekeeper paused. He'll come back, Your Grace. And when he does, you need to be ready. Ready for what? For the fight. Because that Voss woman won't stop. She's lost ground, lost face, and she'll want blood for it. Clara thought of Helena's frozen smile, the calculation in her eyes. What can she possibly do? She has no power here. She has connections, money, and a grudge. Mrs. Hallowell met Clara's eyes. Be careful, Your Grace. Women like that are dangerous when cornered. Victor returned 6 days later, at 3 a.m, covered in rock dust and dried blood. Clara woke to commotion in the entrance hall. Raised voices, footsteps, someone calling for hot water and bandages. She threw on a dressing gown and ran downstairs to find chaos. Victor was leaning against the doorframe, face gray with exhaustion, right arm cradled against his chest. His coat was torn, his shirt black with dirt, and something darker. Behind him, 2 of his men looked equally battered. What happened? Clara reached for him instinctively. You're hurt. It's nothing, just bruising. His voice was hoarse, raw. The men, we got them out. All 3. But the tunnel collapsed during the rescue and his knees buckled. Clara caught him, or tried to. He was too heavy, too tall, but she braced herself against his weight and held on while footmen rushed to help. Get him upstairs, she ordered. Send for Dr. Brennan. And someone wake cook. We'll need broth, bread, whatever can be prepared quickly. They carried Victor to his bedroom, a space Clara had never entered before. It was stark, masculine, almost monastic in its simplicity. No photographs, no personal items, just dark furniture and darker walls. Out, Clara told the footman once they'd gotten Victor onto the bed. I'll tend to him until the doctor arrives. Your Grace, it's not proper. Out! They fled. Clara turned to Victor, who was trying to sit up despite obvious pain. Stop moving. You're injured. I'm fine. You collapsed in the entrance hall. That's not fine. She began unfastening his ruined coat, hands steady despite her racing heart. What happened? Told you. Tunnel collapsed during the rescue. Timber caught me across the ribs and shoulder. Could have been worse. Could have been fatal. The coat came away, revealing a shirt soaked through with blood from a gash on his upper arm. Clara's breath caught. Victor, this needs stitches. It'll wait for Brennan. It'll wait for nothing. You're bleeding on your own bed. She grabbed clean linens from his washstand, pressed them against the wound. Hold this. Pressure, don't argue. He obeyed, something like amusement flickering in his exhausted eyes. You're very commanding when you're worried. I'm not worried. I'm practical. If you die, I'll have to manage this entire estate myself, and I'm not ready for that level of responsibility. Liar. His good hand caught hers. You've been managing it for weeks, and you're brilliant at it. The compliment caught her off guard. You're delirious from blood loss. I'm completely lucid. Clara, I'm sorry I left without seeing you first. The message came at dawn, and I had to... I know, I got your letter. 3 men trapped. You had to go. Did you think I abandoned you? The question was so direct, so vulnerable, that Clara couldn't lie. Yes, for a moment. The rumors didn't help. Victor's jaw tightened. What rumors? That you were with Helena. That the marriage is a sham. that I'm being made a fool of. She met his eyes. Your staff heard it from Lady Pemberton's staff, who heard it from sources unknown. It spread through the household like wildfire. That's... He started to rise, winced. That's not true. Any of it. I know that now, but for 6 days, I didn't know where you were or if you were coming back. And people were whispering. I'm sorry. His grip on her hand tightened. I should have sent word, daily. I should have... There's no excuse. I'm sorry. Dr. Brennan arrived before Clara could respond, bustling in with his medical bag and an air of perpetual disapproval. He shooed Clara from the room while he examined Victor, muttering about foolish nobility and unnecessary heroics. Clara paced the hallway outside, still wearing her dressing gown, hair loose around her shoulders. Dawn was breaking over London, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold. The house was waking. She could hear servants moving about their morning routines, pretending not to notice their Duchess standing vigil outside the Duke's bedroom. Your Grace, Dr. Brennan emerged, wiping his hands on a towel. He'll live. Cracked ribs, deep laceration on the arm, extensive bruising. He needs bed rest, which he won't take, and someone to ensure he doesn't immediately return to his minds, which is impossible. I'll manage it, Clara said. The doctor's eyebrows rose. Will you now? Yes. Tell me what he needs. Brennan studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Keep the wound clean and dressed. Change the bandages twice daily. Watch for fever, any sign of infection, and send for me immediately. Make sure he eats even if he claims he's not hungry. And for the love of all that's holy, keep him out of his study. The man needs rest, not ledgers. Understood. You're a brave woman, Your Grace. Managing him is harder than managing the household. After the doctor left, Clara slipped back into Victor's room. He was propped against pillows, chest bandaged, eyes closed. She thought he was sleeping until he spoke. You don't have to stay. I know. She pulled a chair close to the bed, sat. I'm staying anyway. His eyes opened, finding hers in the dim light. Why? Because you saved 3 men's lives and nearly died doing it. Because you're injured and someone needs to make sure you follow doctor's orders. Because... She hesitated, then said it. Because you're my husband. And whatever this marriage is or isn't, I won't abandon you when you need help. Something shifted in his expression, walls crumbling, armor cracking. I don't deserve you. Probably not, but you're stuck with me regardless. The corner of his mouth lifted. Lucky me. They sat in comfortable silence as daylight strengthened, London waking outside the windows. Clara eventually dozed in her chair, waking periodically to check Victor's breathing, to adjust his blankets, to simply watch him sleep. She was still there when Mrs. Hallowell found her at noon, bringing tea and a knowing look. Your Grace, you've been here for hours. He shouldn't be alone. The staff can sit with him. No. Clara's voice was firm. I'll stay. Mrs. Hallowell's expression softened. Very well, but at least change into proper clothes and eat something. I'll watch him while you're gone. Clara agreed reluctantly, returning to her own rooms to wash and dress. Sarah helped her into a simple day dress, chattering about how the entire household was talking about the Duchess's devotion to the injured Duke. It's very romantic, Your Grace, like something from a novel. It's very practical, Clara corrected. Someone has to ensure he doesn't immediately return to work and undo all the doctor's efforts. But alone in her room, she admitted the truth. She wanted to be there, wanted to take care of him, wanted to be the person he saw when he woke. When had that happened? When had Victor Ashford stopped being her jailer and become someone she actually cared about? She didn't have an answer, and that terrified her more than anything. Victor was a terrible patient. By the second day, he was demanding his correspondence be brought to his bedroom. By the third, he was attempting to get out of bed against doctor's orders. Clara caught him halfway to the door, one hand pressed to his bandaged ribs, face white with pain. Where exactly do you think you're going? My study. There are contracts that need... The contracts can wait. Get back in bed. Clara, I'm fine. You're not fine. You can barely stand. Now get back in bed before you tear your stitches, and I have to listen to Dr. Brennan lecture us both about stubborn nobility. Victor glared at her. You're enjoying this. Immensely. Bed, now. He obeyed with ill grace, muttering about tyrannical wives and unnecessary coddling. But Clara noticed he didn't actually argue, and when she arranged pillows behind him so he could sit up more comfortably, he caught her wrist. Thank you. For bullying you into bed rest? For caring. His thumb traced circles on her inner wrist, sending heat up her arm. I'm not used to it. People caring about you? That's sad. People caring without wanting something in return. His eyes held hers. What do you want, Clara? The question hung between them, heavy with meaning. I want you to heal, she said carefully. I want this marriage to be more than a transaction. She took a breath. I want to know you, the real you. Not the Duke, not the businessman. You. Victor was quiet for so long she thought she'd overstepped. Then he tugged her down to sit on the edge of the bed. My father was a bastard, he said bluntly. Brilliant with money, ruthless in business, and cruel at home. He taught me that showing weakness was invitation for attack, that emotions were liabilities, that the only things that mattered were power and profit. Clara listened, barely breathing. My mother tried to be warm, loving, everything he wasn't. He crushed that out of her. By the time I was 12, she was a ghost in her own house. She died when I was 16, and I think it was a relief for her. An escape. Victor, I inherited everything at 21. The title, the money, the businesses, and I swore I'd never become him. But I didn't know how to be anything else. So I built walls, kept everyone at distance, focused on profit and power because those were safe. Quantifiable. He looked at her. Then you appeared, and suddenly the walls weren't working anymore. Clara's heart hammered against her ribs. Why did you marry me? Because your father owed me a significant sum, and offering you was his way of settling the debt. I could have refused, should have refused. But I looked at you during that first meeting, terrified but defiant, barely 18 but already so strong, and I thought, he paused, I thought maybe you could save me from becoming my father. Maybe having someone good in my life would keep me human. That's a terrible reason to marry someone. I know. It was selfish and unfair, and you deserve better. But Clara, his hand found hers. I don't regret it. These weeks watching you transform this house, stand up to Helena, face down gossip with your head high, you're the bravest person I've ever met, and I'm falling. A knock interrupted. Mrs. Hallowell entered without waiting for permission, face grim. Your Grace, your Graces, we have a problem. The problem was Helena Voss. She'd filed a complaint with the magistrate claiming Victor owed her £10,000 for a business investment that had failed. She had contracts, signatures, correspondence, all apparently documenting a partnership in which she'd provided capital and received nothing but broken promises in return. It's fabricated, Victor said flatly, studying the papers Mrs. Hallowell had brought. Every word of it. I never took her money. We discussed a joint venture once, but nothing was signed, nothing was agreed. These documents say otherwise. Mrs. Hallowell pointed to Victor's signature at the bottom of several pages. That's your seal, Your Grace. Your handwriting. It's forged, skillfully, but forged. Victor threw the papers aside, immediately winced at the movement. She's retaliating, for the ball, for Clara's confrontation. Can she win? Clara asked. In court? If it goes to trial, maybe. These documents are convincing, and she'll have witnesses, people she's paid or manipulated into supporting her claims. Victor's jaw tightened. Even if I win, the scandal will be devastating. Business partners will question my integrity, investors will withdraw, the Ashford name will be mud. So we discredit her first, Clara said. We prove she's lying. How? She's had weeks to build this case. We have nothing but my word against her evidence. Clara stood, mind racing. We have more than that. We have your household accounts, your correspondence files, proof of every transaction you've made for years. If this partnership never existed, there will be no record of it anywhere in your legitimate business dealings. Absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence. Any lawyer will argue I kept this venture secret. Then we find proof she forged the documents. Someone wrote these, signed your name, sealed them with your stamp. That means access to your study, your papers, your seal. Clara turned to Mrs. Hallowell. Who had that kind of access? The housekeeper's face went carefully blank. Your Grace, I couldn't say. You can. You know everything that happens in this house. So who? Silence. Then, Mr. Pemberton, the steward. He's been with the family for 15 years, handles most of His Grace's correspondence, has keys to the study and access to the seal when His Grace is away. Victor went very still. Richard wouldn't betray me. Wouldn't he? Clara asked quietly. For enough money? For Helena's promises? People do terrible things when properly motivated. He's been loyal for 15 years means 15 years of learning your habits, your signature, your seal. It means 15 years of access to everything Helena would need to forge convincing documents. Clara moved to Victor's desk, began pulling out ledgers. Where are the household employment records? I want to see everyone who's been paid, when, and how much. Mrs. Hallowell produced the records. Clara spread them across the bed, scanning entries with the speed she'd developed managing the accounts. And there, buried in routine expenses, she found it. Pemberton's been receiving bonuses, large ones, irregular payments that don't correspond to holidays or standard staff rewards. £500 in March, £800 in May, £1,000 just after our wedding. She looked up. This is payoff money. Someone's been buying his loyalty. Victor leaned forward, ignoring his pain. That's not proof of forgery. No, but it's suspicious. And if we can prove he's been taking money from Helena, then we can prove conspiracy. Victor's eyes sharpened. Clara, you're brilliant. I'm practical. Now we need to search his quarters before he realizes we're onto him. We can't just raid a servant's room without cause. He's stealing from you. That's cause. Clara was already moving toward the door. Mrs. Hallowell, I need you to distract Pemberton. Send him on an errand, something that'll keep him away for at least an hour. And send Sarah to me, quietly. The housekeeper hesitated only a moment before nodding. Consider it done, Your Grace. 20 minutes later, Clara was standing in the steward's quarters, a tidy room above the carriage house, with Sarah keeping watch at the door. She moved quickly, methodically, searching through drawers and papers with hands that refused to shake. Your Grace, if we're caught, Sarah whispered. We won't be. Keep watching. In the bottom of Pemberton's wardrobe, beneath a false panel Clara only found by accident, she discovered a small chest, locked. She used a letter opener to pry it open, damaging the wood but not caring. Inside, correspondence. Letters from Helena detailing exactly what she needed. Victor's signature on fabricated contracts, his seal on falsified agreements, promises of payment, instructions on how to cover tracks. And at the bottom, a banknote for £2,000, signed by Helena Voss herself. Clara gathered everything, hands trembling now with rage. This man had betrayed Victor, had sold out his employer for money, had helped Helena build a case that could destroy the Ashford family. We're done, she told Sarah. Let's go. They made it back to the main house without encountering Pemberton. Clara went straight to Victor's room, dumped the evidence on his bed. Found it, all of it. Letters, instructions, payment. Pemberton's been working with Helena for months. Victor stared at the papers, face going through shock, fury, and finally cold calculation. This is enough, more than enough. We can take this to the magistrate, have Helena's case dismissed, possibly even bring charges against them both. Good. Clara sat heavily in her chair, adrenaline draining away. Then do it. Clara, Victor caught her hand. What you just did, searching his quarters, finding this evidence, that took courage and cleverness and a complete disregard for propriety that I find incredibly attractive. Despite everything, Clara felt her face heat. I was protecting our household. You were protecting me. After weeks of me treating you terribly, abandoning you, leaving you to face society's cruelty alone, you still protected me. His grip tightened. Why? She met his eyes. Because somewhere between the wedding and now, you stopped being my jailer and became my husband, and I protect what's mine. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Victor pulled her closer, ignoring the pain it must have caused his ribs. Clara. The door burst open. Mrs. Hallowell stood there, face white. He's gone. Pemberton. Someone warned him. He's fled. The next 3 hours were chaos. Victor sent men to search for Pemberton at every coaching inn and dock in London. The magistrate was summoned, shown the evidence, and convinced to drop Helena's case pending investigation into fraud. Lawyers were dispatched to begin building a case against both Helena and the missing steward. Through it all, Clara stood beside Victor, making decisions, issuing orders, becoming the Duchess the household needed. By evening, Pemberton was found, attempting to board a ship to France, carrying a bag heavy with coins. He was arrested, brought back in chains, and questioned by Victor's lawyers. He broke within an hour, confessing everything. Helena had approached him 2 years ago, long before Clara arrived. She'd promised him wealth, position, even hinted at marriage once she became the next Duchess. All he had to do was provide information, forge a few documents, help her secure what she called her rightful place. She said you'd tire of the girl, Pemberton said, his voice hollow. That the marriage wouldn't last. That you'd come back to her, and I'd be rewarded for my loyalty. Victor listened to the confession with a face like stone. When it was done, he simply said, "Get him out of my sight." After the lawyers left with their prisoner, Victor and Clara were finally alone. Full dark had fallen over London. The house was quiet, exhausted from the day's drama. "It's over," Clara said quietly. "Not quite. Helena's still out there. We have enough to charge her with fraud and conspiracy, but she has powerful friends. This will be a fight." "Then we fight." Clara moved to stand beside him at the window, looking out over the city. "Together." Victor turned to face her fully. His injuries had left him pale, shadows under his eyes. But there was something new in his expression, something open. "Clara Ashford, Duchess of Ashford, my wife." He said each title like a revelation. "Do you have any idea how extraordinary you are? I'm not. You are. You walked into a hostile household, survived society's cruelty, faced down my demons, and somehow managed to save me from my own staff's betrayal. All while I was too blind to see what I had. Victor, I'm falling in love with you." The words came out rough, unpracticed. "I don't know when it started. Maybe the moment you stood up to Helena at the ball. Maybe when you threw that maid out of the kitchen. Maybe the first time you smiled at me like I was worth smiling at. But it's happening, and I can't stop it, and I don't want to." Clara's breath caught. "You don't mean that." "I never say things I don't mean. It's inconvenient and terrifying and completely unplanned. But it's true." He reached for her hands. "I know I have no right to ask for your feelings in return. I've been cold, distant, cruel sometimes. But if you'll give me a chance, a real chance, I'll spend the rest of my life proving I can be the husband you deserve." Clara looked at their joined hands, thinking of everything that had led to this moment. The forced marriage, the loneliness, the gradual thawing, the crisis that had finally broken through his walls. "You're an idiot," she said finally. Victor blinked. "I beg your pardon?" "You heard me. You're an idiot if you think I've been managing this household, fighting your battles, and sitting at your bedside for days because I feel nothing." She stepped closer, tilting her head back to meet his eyes. "I started falling for you the moment you defended me at the ball. And I kept falling every day since, so yes, Victor Ashford, I'll give you a chance. But I want it all, your trust, your honesty, your time. Not just when it's convenient, always." "Always," he echoed. Then he kissed her. It was nothing like Clara had imagined a first kiss would be. It was desperate and clumsy, and Victor winced when she accidentally pressed against his injured ribs. But it was real, honest, theirs. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Victor rested his forehead against hers. "We have a war to fight," he murmured. "Helena won't go quietly. Let her come. We'll be ready." "Together?" "Together." Outside, London glittered in the darkness, unaware that in one townhouse, a contract marriage was transforming into something dangerously real, unaware that Helena Voss was already planning her next move, unaware that the worst was yet to come. But for that moment, in Victor's bedroom with dawn hours away, Clara and Victor stood together, no longer strangers, no longer alone. Whatever came next, they'd face it as partners. The cage door had finally opened, Now they just had to survive the enemies waiting outside. The cage door had finally opened. Now they just had to survive the enemies waiting outside. Helena struck 3 days later. Clara was reviewing correspondence in the morning room when Mrs. Hallowell appeared, face ashen, clutching a newspaper like it might bite her. "Your Grace, you need to see this." The London Times society page. Clara's hands went cold as she read the headline. Duchess of Ashford, bankrupt merchant's daughter or calculated schemer. The article was vicious. It detailed her father's debts with surgical precision. The gambling, the failed investments, the estate mortgaged to oblivion. But worse, it suggested Clara had orchestrated the entire marriage, seducing Victor deliberately, trapping him into paying her father's debts while positioning herself to inherit the Ashford fortune. Sources close to the Duke suggest the marriage has been troubled from the start, Clara read aloud, voice shaking. The young Duchess, barely out of the schoolroom, has installed herself as household tyrant, dismissing loyal staff and alienating His Grace's longtime business associates. Questions arise. Did she marry for love or for access to one of England's greatest fortunes? "It's all lies," Mrs. Hallowell said fiercely. "Everyone in this household knows. Everyone in this household doesn't matter. It's what London society thinks that counts." Clara set down the paper, mind racing. This is Helena's work. It has to be. The article doesn't name her. It doesn't have to. Who else has motive to destroy my reputation? Clara stood pacing. She can't attack Victor directly. The fraud charges make her look guilty. So she's attacking me instead, making me look like a schemer, a gold digger, someone who manipulated my way into this family. Victor burst through the door, still favoring his injured ribs, face thunderous. "Have you seen—" "Yes." Clara handed him the paper. "Your former companion is thorough. I'll give her that." He scanned the article, jaw tightening with each line. "This is slander. We'll sue for defamation, force a retraction. That'll take months. By then the damage is done. Society already whispers about me. This just gives them permission to say it out loud." Clara's voice was steady despite the panic clawing at her throat. "I'm going to be ruined. We're going to be ruined." "No." Victor threw the paper aside. "Absolutely not. We'll issue a statement, have our lawyers—" "Victor, stop." Clara met his eyes. "You can't fix this with money or lawyers. This is a fight in the court of public opinion, and I'm already losing." "Then what do you suggest?" The question hung between them. Clara thought of her father's estate, the whispers that had followed her even before the marriage, the way society had looked at her at Lady Pemberton's ball, like a curiosity, a mistake, something that didn't belong. "I need to go public," she said slowly. "Tell my side of the story before Helena controls the narrative completely." "How?" "The papers that printed this won't give you space to refute. Not the papers. Society itself." An idea was forming, reckless and dangerous. "Lady Pemberton hosts a charity luncheon next week. Every important woman in London will be there. I'll attend. I'll face them directly, answer their questions, make them see I'm not the villain Helena's painting me as." Victor stared at her like she'd suggested walking into a lion's den. "Clara, that's suicide. They'll eat you alive." "Maybe. Or maybe they'll respect the courage it takes to show up and defend myself." She lifted her chin. "Either way, I'm not hiding. I won't let Helena win by default." "You don't have to do this alone. I'll come with you." "No, this is a women's event. You showing up would make it worse, like I can't fight my own battles." Clara softened her voice. "I appreciate the instinct to protect me, but I need to do this myself." Victor looked like he wanted to argue. Then his expression shifted, resignation mixed with pride. "You're the bravest person I've ever met. You know that?" "I'm terrified." "That's what makes it brave." He pulled her close, careful of his ribs. "When is this luncheon?" "Friday, 3 days from now." "Then we have 3 days to prepare. I'll have our lawyers document everything, your father's debts, the circumstances of our marriage, proof that you had no hand in negotiating the terms. We'll arm you with facts." "Facts won't matter if they've already decided I'm guilty." "Then we'll make them matter." Victor's eyes blazed. "I won't let her destroy you, Clara. Whatever it takes." The preparation was brutal. Victor's lawyers grilled Clara for hours, documenting every detail of her father's financial collapse, her mother's death years earlier, the moment her father had told her she'd be marrying the Duke of Ashford, whether she liked it or not. He said it would save the family, Clara recounted, throat tight, that this was my duty. I was 18. I'd never even met the Duke. But I knew if I refused, we'd lose everything, the house, the land, whatever dignity we had left. The lead lawyer, Mr. Thornton, scribbled notes. Did you attempt to seduce His Grace at any point before or during the courtship? Clara's face burned. There was no courtship. We met twice before the wedding. Both meetings were formal, supervised, lasted less than an hour. I barely spoke to him. Did you discuss his fortune, express interest in his business holdings? I didn't know the extent of his fortune until after the marriage. I knew he was wealthy. Everyone knows that. But the specifics? No. Thornton nodded, still writing. And the household changes you implemented, dismissing staff, reorganizing accounts, were those motivated by personal gain? They were motivated by efficiency and honesty. I dismissed one servant for theft. I reorganized accounts to make them clearer. I did my job as Duchess. Clara's patience was fraying. Is there a question in there, or are you just helping me practice for the firing squad? Thornton's lips twitched. Lady Pemberton's guests will be far less polite than I am, Your Grace. You need to be prepared for accusations, insinuations, outright hostility. If you lose your temper, I won't. If you cry, I won't do that either. If you show weakness of any kind, they'll use it against you. He set down his pen, studying her. Why are you doing this? You could weather the scandal quietly, let it blow over. It won't blow over, not while Helena's actively feeding it. Clara stood, moving to the window. Outside, London sprawled in autumn gray, indifferent to her crisis. If I hide, I'm admitting guilt. If I fight back, I at least have a chance. After the lawyers left, Victor found her still standing at the window. How did it go? They think I'm insane for attending the luncheon. They're not wrong. He came to stand beside her, close enough that his shoulder brushed hers. It's not too late to change your mind. Yes, it is. I've already accepted Lady Pemberton's invitation. Withdrawing now would look like cowardice. Surviving isn't cowardice. Clara turned to face him. I didn't marry you to survive, Victor. I married you because I had no choice. But staying married, building this partnership, fighting for our reputation, that's my choice. And I choose to fight. Something flickered in his eyes. Heat, admiration, fear. Then I'll be waiting when you come home. No matter what happens. What if I make it worse? What if I say the wrong thing and confirm every terrible thing they're already thinking? Then we'll deal with it. Together. He caught her hands. Clara, listen to me. Whatever they say to you in that room, whatever poison Helena's spread, it doesn't change what I know. You're brilliant, strong, honest. You've transformed this household, saved me from my own staff's betrayal, and somehow managed to make me feel things I thought I was incapable of feeling. They can't take that away. Clara's eyes burned. I'm scared. I know, but you're going anyway. That's what makes you extraordinary. Deb. Friday arrived too quickly. Clara dressed with excruciating care. A day dress in deep burgundy, elegant but not ostentatious, her hair styled simply, the Ashford diamonds at her throat. She looked like a duchess. She needed to feel like one. Sarah fastened the final clasp, hands gentle. You'll do wonderfully, Your Grace. Show those harpies what you're made of. Sarah, that's inappropriate, but accurate. The maid met her eyes in the mirror. We're all behind you, the whole household. You've been good to us, fair and kind. We won't forget that. Clara's throat tightened. Thank you. Victor walked her to the carriage, his presence steadying. At the last moment, he pulled her close, pressed a kiss to her temple. Remember, you belong in that room just as much as any of them. More, because you earned your place through merit, not just birth. What if they ask about Helena, about your relationship with her? Tell them the truth. She was a business associate who mistook professional courtesy for personal interest. When she realized I had no intention of marrying her, she became vindictive. His jaw tightened. If they want details about my personal life, they can ask me directly. You owe them nothing. The carriage ride to Lady Pemberton's estate felt both endless and too short. Clara watched London pass by, shops closing for the afternoon, children playing in squares, ordinary people living ordinary lives, and felt disconnected from all of it. She was about to walk into a room full of women who already believed the worst about her. Women with power, connections, the ability to destroy her reputation with a whisper. The carriage stopped. A footman opened the door. Clara took a breath and stepped out. Whoa. Lady Pemberton's drawing room glittered with afternoon light and barely concealed malice. 30 women occupied silk chairs and settees, teacups poised like weapons, eyes tracking Clara's entrance with predatory interest. The conversation didn't stop. That would be too obvious. But it shifted, became pointed. Of course, breeding shows in the end. Quite bold of her to appear. Desperation, really. Lady Pemberton herself rose to greet Clara, smile sharp. Your Grace, how delightful that you could join us. Thank you for the invitation, Lady Pemberton. Clara's voice carried across the room, steady and clear. I appreciate the opportunity to address the misunderstandings that have been circulating. Silence fell like a guillotine blade. Misunderstandings? A woman in peacock blue, Lady Hartwell, Clara remembered, set down her teacup with deliberate precision. Is that what we're calling outright deception now? Clara turned to face her. I'm calling it what it is, Lady Hartwell. Lies spread by people with grudges and no regard for truth. The newspapers print what sells, scandal sells. The truth is far less interesting. Clara moved deeper into the room, forcing herself to walk slowly, meet eyes, show no fear. My father was in debt. That's no secret. The Duke of Ashford agreed to clear those debts in exchange for marriage. Also no secret. What seems to confuse people is the idea that I might be a victim of circumstance rather than a calculating schemer. You expect us to believe you had no choice? Another woman, dripping with emeralds. That you were forced into marriage with one of England's wealthiest men? I expect you to understand that arranged marriages are not new to our class. How many of you married for love? Clara let the question hang. Several women shifted uncomfortably. My marriage began as a transaction. I won't apologize for that because it's the truth. What I will say is that I've worked to make it more. I've run the Ashford household, supported my husband's business, and tried to be a good duchess. If that makes me a schemer, then I suppose I'm guilty. Lady Pemberton's eyes narrowed. And what of Mrs. Voss? The charges of fraud were fabricated by a woman scorned. Clara's voice turned to ice. Mrs. Voss believed she would become the next Duchess of Ashford. When my husband married me instead, she retaliated. The evidence of her conspiracy is documented and will be presented in court. But she's clever. She can't attack the Duke directly without looking guilty, so she attacks me instead. Destroys my reputation to hurt him. How convenient, Lady Hartwell murmured, blaming the other woman. I'm not blaming her for my father's debts or my arranged marriage. I'm blaming her for forgery, conspiracy, and slander, all of which can be proven. The room erupted in whispers. Clara stood in the center of it, heart hammering, hands steady by sheer force of will. Then the door opened. Helena Voss walked in. She wore black silk, mourning colors, though Clara had no idea whom she might be mourning, and diamonds that probably cost more than Clara's entire wardrobe. Her smile was pure venom. Forgive the interruption, Lady Pemberton. I heard the Duchess was in attendance and simply had to offer my support. The lie was so blatant, so audacious, that several women gasped. Clara stood frozen, watching Helena glide across the room like a snake through grass. Your Grace? Helena's curtsy was mocking. How brave of you to face society after everything that's been revealed. I admire your resilience. Mrs. Voss, Clara's voice came out strangled. I didn't expect to see you here. Didn't you? But we're practically family now. After all, I was so close to dear Victor before you arrived. Helena settled onto a settee, crossing her legs with deliberate elegance. Ladies, I feel I must defend the Duchess. These rumors about her being a gold digger are simply cruel. I'm sure she married Victor for perfectly legitimate reasons. The implication that there were illegitimate reasons hung in the air. Clara's hands clenched. My reasons for marrying the Duke are between him and myself. Of course. How discreet. Helena smiled at the assembled women. Though one does wonder about the timing, your father's debts, Victor's sudden decision to marry, the rather hasty ceremony, it's almost like someone was very eager to secure the Ashford fortune before Victor changed his mind. That's not, Clara started. And the changes you made to the household, dismissing loyal servants, reorganizing accounts you barely understood, inserting yourself into business matters that were frankly above your station. Helena shook her head sadly. Victor was too kind to say anything, but we all knew you were in over your head. I dismissed one servant for theft. I reorganized accounts because they were inefficient, and I've never interfered with business I didn't understand. No. Then why were you searching through Pemberton's quarters? Why did you accuse him of conspiracy without evidence? Helena leaned forward, eyes glittering. Unless you were trying to eliminate anyone who knew the truth about your arrangement with Victor. Clara's blood went cold. Pemberton confessed. He admitted to forging documents, to working with you. Under duress, after you and Victor threatened him, cornered him, made it impossible for him to defend himself. Helena's voice dripped sympathy. The poor man was terrified. He would have confessed to anything. The room exploded in whispers. Women leaned together, eyes wide, scandal-hungry. Lady Pemberton stood. Mrs. Voss, these are serious accusations. I have proof. Helena produced a letter from her reticule, unfolded it with theatrical precision. This is from Pemberton himself, written before his arrest. He details how the Duchess and Duke forced him to sign a false confession, threatened him with imprisonment if he didn't cooperate. He was going to flee, yes, but from tyranny, not justice. She passed the letter to Lady Pemberton, who read it, face grave. Clara couldn't breathe. This was it. The moment Helena won. The moment her reputation shattered beyond repair. That's a lie, she said, voice breaking. Pemberton stole from us. He forged Victor's signature. Has evidence been presented in court? Helena asked sweetly. Has he been tried and convicted? Or are we simply taking your word that he's guilty? The magistrate has the evidence. The magistrate has papers you claim are evidence. Papers that could just as easily have been fabricated by you. Helena stood, moving closer. Tell me, Your Grace, how convenient that the one person who could testify to the true nature of your marriage arrangement is now sitting in a cell, unable to defend himself. Clara's mind raced. She needed to fight back, needed to expose Helena's lies, but the room was turning against her. She could see it in their faces, the way they watched her with pity and contempt. Ladies, Helena continued, addressing the room, I take no pleasure in this, truly. But we cannot allow ambition and deception to go unchallenged. This girl, she gestured at Clara, married her way into one of England's greatest families through manipulation and her father's debts. Now she's trying to eliminate anyone who knows the truth, destroy anyone who threatens her position. We must ask ourselves, is this the kind of woman we want representing our class? Silence. Then Lady Hartwell spoke. I think the Duchess should leave. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. Clara looked around, seeing doors closing, faces turning away. Even Lady Pemberton looked uncomfortable. Your Grace, their hostess said quietly, perhaps it would be best if you departed, for everyone's sake. This was defeat. Total, humiliating defeat. Clara could leave, walk away, let Helena have this victory, or she could burn it all down. No. The word came out sharp, final. Clara turned to face Helena directly. You want me to run? To hide? To let you control this narrative? I won't. Helena's smile faltered. Your Grace, you're embarrassing yourself. I'm done being embarrassed. Done being afraid. Done letting you manipulate people with half-truths and forged letters. Clara's voice rose. You want to know the truth about my marriage? Fine. I'll tell you all of it. Every ugly, desperate detail. She turned to address the room. My father gambled away our estate. Drank away whatever money we had left. When the Duke of Ashford offered to clear his debts in exchange for marriage, I had a choice. Accept and save my family from complete ruin, or refuse and watch us lose everything. I chose my family. I married a man I didn't know, moved into a house where I wasn't wanted, and tried to make the best of an impossible situation. The women were listening now, actually listening. Was it a transaction? Yes. Did I benefit financially? Of course. But I've also worked every day to earn my place. I've managed a household of 42 people, solved problems, made decisions, supported my husband through crises. I've made mistakes. I'm 19 years old, barely out of the schoolroom, learning to be a duchess on the job. But I've never lied, never cheated, never deliberately hurt anyone. Clara moved closer to Helena, voice dropping to something cold and dangerous. You, on the other hand, have done nothing but scheme and manipulate since the moment you realized Victor wouldn't marry you. You seduced a loyal servant into betraying his employer. You forged documents to extort money. And now you're spreading lies to destroy my reputation because you can't stand that someone else got what you wanted. Helena's face went white, then red. How dare you? I dare because I'm done being afraid of you. You want a war? You have one. But fight me directly. Stop hiding behind gossip and forged letters and other people's scandals. Face me yourself. The room held its breath. Helena stood slowly, composure cracking. You foolish girl. You have no idea what you've just done. I've called your bluff, and judging by your face, I was right to. For a moment, Clara thought Helena might actually strike her. The widow's hands clenched, eyes blazing with pure hatred. Then she smiled, a terrible, knowing smile. You want the truth? Fine. Let's give them truth. Helena turned to the assembled women. The Duke of Ashford has been conducting business with me for 2 years. Not just business. We've been partners in every sense of the word. When his father died and left him the fortune, Victor came to me. We planned a future together. Then this girl's father approached him with an offer too good to refuse, clear a debt and gain social respectability through marriage. Victor accepted because he's practical, but he never stopped seeing me, never stopped conducting our business, never stopped lying. Victor's voice cut through the room like a blade. Every head turned. He stood in the doorway, still favoring his injured ribs but radiating cold fury. Behind him, 2 men in formal dress. Lawyers, Clara realized. Mrs. Voss, Victor said, voice deadly quiet. I suggest you stop talking before you add perjury to your growing list of crimes. Helena's confidence wavered. Victor, darling, I was just explaining. You were spreading lies to destroy my wife's reputation. Again. He moved into the room, lawyers following. Ladies, I apologize for the intrusion. But I couldn't allow Mrs. Voss to continue her slander unchallenged. He crossed to Clara, took her hand in his. The gesture was simple, but the message was clear. We're together. We're united. Mrs. Voss was never my partner, Victor said, addressing the room. She approached me 2 years ago with a business proposal, a joint venture in shipping. I declined. She persisted. I declined again. When I married Clara, Mrs. Voss became vindictive. She corrupted my steward, forged documents claiming I owed her money, and has spent the last month trying to destroy my wife's reputation to hurt me. That's not true. Helena's voice went shrill. We were lovers. Everyone knew? We were never lovers. We were barely acquaintances. Victor's eyes were ice. And now, Mrs. Voss, you're under arrest. The lawyer stepped forward. One produced a document, held it up. By order of the magistrate, Helena Voss, you are charged with fraud, forgery, and conspiracy to extort funds from the Duke of Ashford. Additional charges of criminal slander are pending. Helena stumbled backward. You can't. This is absurd. The evidence is overwhelming. Pemberton's full confession, financial records showing payments to him from your accounts, forged documents bearing traces of your handwriting, and multiple witnesses to your campaign of slander against the Duchess. The lawyer gestured to 2 constables who'd appeared in the doorway. Mrs. Voss, you need to come with us. The room erupted, women talking over each other, fans snapping, teacups forgotten, as society's elite watched one of their own lead away in chains. Helena fought, screaming accusations that made no sense, but the constables were firm. As they dragged her toward the door, she locked eyes with Clara. This isn't over, she hissed. You think you've won, but you have no idea what's coming. I've made sure of it. Then she was gone. The silence that followed was deafening. Lady Pemberton recovered first. Your Graces, I don't know what to say. Say nothing, Victor replied. We'll take our leave. Clara, are you ready? Clara nodded, not trusting her voice. She was shaking, adrenaline crashing through her system, barely holding herself together. They made it to the carriage before her legs gave out. Victor caught her, held her as she sobbed into his shoulder, fear, relief, rage, all of it pouring out in gasping breaths. He said nothing, just held her, one hand stroking her hair, the other wrapped around her waist. I thought I lost, she managed. I thought she'd destroyed everything. You were magnificent, terrifying and magnificent. He pulled back enough to look at her face. You faced them down, Clara. All of them, including her. I've never been more proud of anyone in my life. How did you know to come? Mrs. Hallowell sent word. Said Helena had shown up and you might need backup. His jaw tightened. I should have anticipated she'd try something like this. Should have protected you better. I didn't want protection. I wanted to fight my own battle. And you did. Brilliantly. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, finally her mouth, gentle despite the passion beneath. Let's go home. They returned to Ashford House to find the staff lined up in the entrance hall, as if waiting for news from a war front. Mrs. Hallowell stepped forward. Your Graces? It's done, Victor said. Helena's been arrested. The charges will stick this time. We have everything we need to convict her. Applause broke out, actual applause, from servants who'd witnessed their Duchess fight and win. Clara felt tears threatening again. Thank you, all of you, for believing in me. Always, Your Grace, Sarah said, beaming. That night, Clara and Victor ate dinner together. Not a formal affair, but a simple meal in his study, plates balanced on their laps, pretense abandoned. What happens now? Clara asked. Now we wait for the trial. Helena will try to bargain, claim diminished capacity or manipulation, but the evidence is solid. She'll be convicted, probably exiled if she's lucky, prison if she's not. And us? Victor set down his plate, turned to face her fully. Us. That's an interesting question. Clara's heart hammered. Victor, I meant what I said before. I'm falling in love with you. Probably already fallen, if I'm being honest. He took her hand. This marriage started as a transaction, but it's become the most important thing in my life. You're the most important thing in my life. Even though I come with scandal and newspaper articles and public humiliation, especially because of that. You could have hidden, run, let me handle everything. Instead, you walked into that room and fought like a queen defending her kingdom. He kissed her knuckles. Clara Ashford, will you stay married to me? Not because you have to, but because you want to. She pretended to consider. Are you going to keep disappearing for days on end? No. Are you going to talk to me? Actually talk about your business, your feelings, your life. Yes, it'll be awkward and uncomfortable, but yes. Are you going to trust me as your partner, not just your wife? Already do. Clara smiled, tears and laughter mixing. Then yes, I'll stay married to you, not because I have to, because I choose to. He kissed her then, deep and hungry and full of promise. And for the first time since their wedding day, Clara felt like she was exactly where she belonged. But outside in the London night, a messenger was riding hard toward the docks. In a cell awaiting trial, Helena Voss was writing a letter with a smile on her face. And in Cornwall, at the Wheal Margaret mine, something was going terribly wrong. The storm wasn't over. It was just beginning. The storm wasn't over. It was just beginning. The messenger arrived at dawn, pounding on the door hard enough to wake the entire household. Clara heard the commotion from Victor's bedroom. She'd fallen asleep there after their conversation, curled against his chest, his arms wrapped around her like a promise. Victor was already moving, pulling on a shirt, face grim. That's the emergency signal from Cornwall. Clara sat up, heart hammering. The mine? Has to be. He was dressed in seconds, heading for the door. Stay here. Absolutely not. Clara grabbed her dressing gown, followed him down the stairs. If something's wrong, I want to know what. The messenger was in the entrance hall, mud-splattered and exhausted, holding out a sealed letter with shaking hands. Victor broke the seal, scanned the contents, and went white. What is it? Clara moved closer, trying to read over his shoulder. Sabotage. Someone flooded the lower tunnels during the night shift. 23 men trapped, water still rising. His voice was hollow. They're estimating 6 hours before the tunnels are completely underwater. Can they pump it out? Not fast enough. And the structural damage is extensive. The whole west shaft might collapse. Victor crumpled the letter in his fist. I have to go. Now. Then we're going together. He turned to stare at her. Clara, it's dangerous. I don't care. Those are your men, your responsibility, which makes them mine too. She met his eyes. We're partners, remember? That means I don't sit home safe while you ride into danger alone. Something flickered across his face. Protest, then resignation, finally gratitude. Get dressed. We leave in 15 minutes. They rode out before the sun cleared the horizon, accompanied by Victor's mine engineers and rescue crew. The journey to Cornwall took 8 brutal hours by express coach, every minute ticking away like a countdown to disaster. Clara spent the ride reviewing everything Victor told her about mine operations: ventilation systems, water pumps, structural supports. She asked questions, took notes, forced her mind to focus on logistics instead of the growing terror. Why would someone sabotage the mine? She asked. What's the motive? Money, usually. Competitors wanting to shut down production, or someone with a grudge. Victor's jaw tightened. Or revenge. Helena has connections to rival mining operations. She could have arranged this. From a jail cell? She wrote a letter, sent a messenger. She said this wasn't over. Maybe she meant it literally. Clara's stomach turned. If people die because of her, they won't. We'll get them out. But Victor's voice lacked conviction. They reached Wheel Margaret as afternoon light slanted across the Cornish hills. The mine entrance was chaos, workers shouting, pumps running at full capacity, families clustered nearby in terrified silence. The mine foreman, a grizzled man named Trelawney, met them at the entrance. Your Grace, thank the heavens you're here. We've got 23 men in the lower shaft, water's up to their waists and rising. Pumps can't keep pace with the flood. Show me the schematics. Victor was already moving toward the operations tent. I need to see exactly where they're trapped. Inside the tent, maps covered every surface, detailed drawings of the mine's labyrinth tunnels. Victor studied them with an engineer's precision, tracing routes, calculating distances. Here, he pointed to a section deep underground. They're stuck behind this collapse. The main shaft is flooded, but if we can dig through from the old east tunnel, that shaft's been sealed for 10 years, Your Grace. Unstable ground, risk of gas pockets. It's also the only route that doesn't go through water. We dig here, shore up as we go. We can reach them before the flood does. Trelawney shook his head. That's suicide. The east tunnel could collapse on the rescue team. Then we reinforce as we dig. I've done it before. Victor looked up, eyes hard. We're not leaving 23 men to drown because the rescue is difficult. Your Grace, with respect, you're still healing from the last collapse. Your ribs are fine. Get me a crew and equipment. We start immediately. Clara watched the exchange, seeing the fear in Trelawney's face, the determination in Victor's, and she understood. Victor was going into that mine himself, into danger. Again. She caught his arm as he moved toward the equipment shed. You can't seriously be planning to go down there. I don't have a choice. Yes, you do. Send the rescue team. Supervise from here. Those men are down there because someone sabotaged my mine. They're my responsibility. His voice was gentle but immovable. I won't ask others to risk their lives while I stand safe above ground. You're injured. One wrong move and you could... I know the risks. He cupped her face in his hands. Clara, I have to do this. Can you understand that? She wanted to scream at him, forbid it, lock him somewhere safe. Instead, she took a shaking breath and nodded. I understand, but I'm not leaving this spot until you come back. I'm counting on it. He kissed her, quick and fierce, then turned to Trelawney. Assemble the rescue crew. We go down in 30 minutes. The preparation was frantic. Men gathered equipment, timber supports, ropes, lamps, breathing apparatus. Victor stripped off his coat, rolled up his sleeves, checked every piece of gear personally. Clara stood watching, useless and terrified, until an idea struck. Mr. Trelawney. She moved to the foreman's side. The family's outside. How many? Near 40, Your Grace. Wives, children, parents. They've been here since news broke. And they're just waiting with no information? We can't tell them much. Don't want to give false hope or cause panic. Clara thought of those women outside, trapped in ignorance while their husbands drowned. She knew that helplessness intimately. I'm going to talk to them. Trelawney blinked. Your Grace, I'm not sure that's wise. I'm not asking permission. She straightened her shoulders. Those women deserve to know what's happening, and they deserve better than standing in silence while men make decisions about their loved ones' lives. She walked out before he could argue. The families were clustered near the mine entrance, women in work-worn dresses, children clinging to their skirts, old men with haunted eyes. They fell silent when Clara approached, watching her with suspicion and desperate hope. My name is Clara Ashford, she said, pitching her voice to Carrie. I'm the Duke's wife, and I'm here to tell you what's happening inside that mine. A woman stepped forward, young, pregnant, tears streaking her face. My husband's down there. Samuel Price. Will they? The Duke and his crew are preparing a rescue right now. They're going to dig through an old sealed tunnel to reach the trapped men. Clara kept her voice steady. It's dangerous. The tunnel might collapse, but it's the only route that avoids the flood, which means it's their best chance. How long? An older woman asked. How long before they reach them? Hours, maybe 3, maybe 6. We won't know until they start digging. Clara met her eyes. I won't lie to you. The situation is desperate, but my husband is the best mining engineer in England, and he's going down there himself to bring your men home. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Shock, fear, fragile hope. What can we do? The pregnant woman asked. We can't just stand here. Clara thought quickly. The rescue crew will need supplies, food, water, blankets for when the men come out. Can you organize that? And we'll need someone monitoring the pumps, someone running messages between here and the operations tent. We can do that, another woman said firmly. Tell us what you need. For the next 2 hours, Clara coordinated. She organized the women into teams, one for supplies, one for communications, one for tending the pumps. She made lists, delegated tasks, kept everyone focused on action instead of fear. It was like managing the Ashford household, but with lives hanging in the balance. When Victor emerged from the operations tent, ready to descend, he stopped short at the site. 40 women working with military precision, supplies organized, messages flowing smoothly. What did you do? He asked Clara quietly. Gave them something to fight for, same as you. She gripped his hand. Come back to me, Victor. That's an order. Yes, Your Grace. His smile was brief but genuine. Then he turned to his crew. Let's move. Clara watched him disappear into the mine entrance, lamplight fading into darkness. Then she returned to the families and kept working because the alternative was falling apart. The wait was agony. Messages trickled up from below. Slow progress, unstable ground, gas pocket detected and sealed. Each update brought relief and fresh terror. Clara read them aloud to the assembled families, translating technical language into plain truth. 3 hours in, a messenger ran up from the shaft entrance, face ashen. Collapse in the east tunnel. 3 men injured, His Grace among them. The world tilted. Clara grabbed the messenger's arm. How badly? Don't know, Your Grace. They're still digging, but what? But they're trapped now, too. The collapse cut off their exit route. Panic threatened to swallow her. Victor was trapped underground, injured, with no clear way out. And she was up here, helpless, watching their rescue attempt turn into disaster. The pregnant woman, Mrs. Price, stepped forward. Your Grace, what do we do? Clara looked at her, at all of them, and knew falling apart wasn't an option. These women were depending on her. Victor was depending on her. We keep working. Her voice was steadier than she felt. The crew down there needs time to clear the collapse. We make sure they have everything ready when they break through. Medical supplies, hot water, food. Mr. Trelawney, what's the status of the pumps? Holding steady, Your Grace. Water level hasn't risen in the last hour. Good. Keep them running, and get me those alternate route maps. There has to be another way to the trapped men. She spent the next hour studying mine schematics with Trelawney and the engineers, searching for options. Every tunnel seemed to dead end in water or unstable rock, except one. Here, she pointed to a narrow passage marked condemned, unsafe. This connects to the east tunnel about 50 feet from where the collapse happened. If we could shore it up, that shaft's been condemned for 15 years, Your Grace. Could collapse if someone breathes wrong. Could, but might not. And right now might is better than definitely drowning. She met his eyes. We don't have to send a full crew. Just one person, light and careful, carrying rope and supplies. If they make it through, they can help clear the collapse from the other side. And if they don't make it, then we're no worse off than we are now. Clara's hands were shaking, but her voice was firm. I'll go. Absolutely not. I'm the lightest person here. I can fit through tight spaces the men can't, and I'm not letting my husband die underground because no one was willing to take a risk. She stood. Get me a lamp and rope. I'm going down. Trelawney stared at her like she'd sprouted wings. Your Grace, His Grace would never forgive me if I let you. His Grace isn't here to have an opinion. I am, and I'm the Duchess of Ashford, which means this mine is as much my responsibility as his. She softened her voice. Those are our men down there, Mr. Trelawney. Our people. I won't abandon them. Will you help me, or do I go alone? The foreman struggled visibly, duty warring with common sense. Finally, he nodded. I'll take you down myself, but if it looks too dangerous, then we retreat. I'm brave, not stupid. 20 minutes later, Clara was descending into the mine, lamp in one hand, rope coiled over her shoulder, every nerve screaming danger. The air grew thick and hot as they descended, stone walls pressing close. She could hear water rushing somewhere below, timbers creaking ominously overhead. This way, Your Grace. Trelawney led her through a maze of tunnels, each narrower than the last. The condemned shaft is just ahead, but I'm warning you, it's barely wide enough for a child. He wasn't exaggerating. The opening was a crack in the rock, maybe 18 inches wide, disappearing into darkness. Clara studied it, heart hammering. Can you hear anything from the other side? Trelawney pressed his ear to the gap. Voices, faint, could be the rescue crew. Then this is the right passage. Clara handed him her lamp, started removing anything that might catch. Her outer skirt, her jacket, reducing herself to just a simple dress and boots. I'm going through. Your Grace, watch the lamp. If it goes out, that means gas. Pull me back immediately. Before Trelawney could argue further, Clara squeezed into the gap. The rock grabbed her immediately, rough stone scraping her shoulders, her hips. She pushed forward, inch by inch, lamplight barely penetrating the darkness ahead. The passage twisted, narrowed, forced her to turn sideways, her chest constricted. Not enough air, too tight. Can't breathe. Your Grace, Trelawney's voice echoed from behind. Can you move? She couldn't answer. Speaking required breath she didn't have. Instead, she pushed forward, centimeter by painful centimeter, until suddenly the passage widened and she tumbled out into a larger tunnel. Lamplight flickered ahead. Voices. Hello? Clara's voice came out hoarse. Is someone there? Footsteps pounded toward her. Then Victor appeared, face black with coal dust, blood on his temple, eyes wild. Clara, what the hell are you doing down here? She wanted to laugh or cry or possibly hit him. Rescuing you, apparently? You came through the condemned shaft? Are you insane? He grabbed her shoulders, checking for injuries. You could have been crushed. So could you, repeatedly. Yet here we both are. She gripped his arms. Are you all right? The message said you were injured. Bruised ribs, cut on the head, nothing serious. His hands were shaking where they held her. Clara, you can't be here. It's too dangerous. Everywhere is too dangerous right now. At least here I can help. She looked past him to where the rescue crew was working frantically to clear fallen rock. How bad is it? Bad. The collapse blocked both our exit and our route to the trapped men. We're trying to dig through, but the rock keeps shifting. One wrong move and the whole thing comes down. Clara studied the situation. Tons of fallen stone, timber supports cracked and groaning, men working with desperate speed. Behind the collapse, she could hear faint shouts, the trapped miners. How much time before the water reaches them? Hour, maybe 2. Victor's voice was bleak. We're not going to make it in time. Yes, we are. Clara moved to the collapsed section, examining it with fresh eyes. You're digging from the top down, trying to clear the whole blockage. But what if we don't need to clear it all? What if we just need a hole big enough to pass through? The rock's unstable. Digging any hole risks total collapse. Digging from above risks total collapse. What about from the side? She pointed to where the fallen stone met the tunnel wall. The rock pile is thickest at the center. But here, on the edge, it's thinner. If we could shore up the surrounding area and dig a narrow passage. Victor followed her gaze, seeing it. That might work. It's still risky, but... He turned to his crew. Stop clearing from above. New plan, we dig a side passage, 6 feet high, 3 feet wide, just enough to get through. Shore up as we go. The crew shifted, attacking the rock pile from a new angle. Progress was faster. The stone at the edges came away in manageable chunks instead of dangerous avalanches. Clara worked alongside them, carrying away debris, handing up timber supports, ignoring Victor's protest that she should stay back. She was covered in rock dust, her hands bleeding, her dress ruined. She'd never felt more alive. 2 hours of brutal labor later, they broke through. The hole was barely large enough to crawl through, but on the other side they could see lamplight, hear voices. "This is Ashford," Victor shouted through the gap. "How many of you are alive?" "All 23, Your Grace," came the reply. "But water's chest high and rising fast. We're getting you out, one at a time through this hole. Move quickly." They began pulling men through, exhausted, terrified, but alive. Clara helped each one emerge, checked them for injuries, passed them back to Trelawney, who'd come through the condemned shaft to help. 23 men. It took an hour to extract them all, an hour of screaming muscles and raw nerves. But finally the last man emerged, and the tunnel behind them was empty except for rising water. "That's everyone," Victor said. "Now we get ourselves out before this whole section floods." They retreated through Clara's narrow passage, the crew first, then the rescued miners, then Trelawney. Clara and Victor went last, working together to collapse the side passage behind them so the flooding wouldn't spread. As they climbed toward the surface, Clara heard it, a roar of rushing water as the lower tunnels finally gave way completely. If they'd been 5 minutes slower, they'd all be dead. They emerged into brilliant sunset light and chaos. The families rushed forward, crying, laughing, grabbing their men. Mrs. Price found her husband and collapsed into his arms, sobbing. Children screamed with joy. Old men wept openly. Clara stood at the mine entrance, covered in filth, bleeding from a dozen scrapes, and watched her husband get mobbed by grateful workers. "You did it, Your Grace!" one shouted. "Saved us all!" "The Duchess saved us," Victor corrected, pointing at Clara. "She found the route through, came down herself to help. Without her, we'd still be trapped." Every eye turned to Clara. The women she'd organized stepped forward, Mrs. Price first. "Your Grace, you didn't have to do any of this. You could have stayed in London, safe and proper. But you came here, you worked with us, you went into that mine yourself." Her voice broke. "You saved my husband, my baby's father. How can I ever—" "You don't have to thank me." Clara's throat was tight. "This is my responsibility too. These men, this mine, this community, they're as much mine to protect as Victor's." Mrs. Price grabbed her hand, held it tight. "Then you're one of us now, properly. Not just a duchess, a Cornish woman." The other women murmured agreement. Men nodded. Even Trelawney cracked a rare smile. And Clara realized something had shifted. These people had accepted her, not because of her title or her marriage, but because she'd proven herself. She'd fought beside them, bled beside them, risked everything beside them. She belonged. Victor found her as the sun set fully, painting the sky in shades of amber and violet. "We should head back to London. There's still Helena's trial to deal with." "Not yet." Clara looked at the assembled families, the damaged mine, the work still to be done. "We need to find out who sabotaged the mine. Make sure it can't happen again. These people need to know they're safe." "That could take days." "Then we stay for days." She met his eyes. "We're partners, remember? That means we deal with problems together, all of them." Victor studied her, filthy, exhausted, magnificent. "You're not the girl I married anymore." "No, I'm the woman I became by marrying you." She smiled. "Better or worse?" Better. Infinitely better. He pulled her close, ignoring the scandalized looks from the workers. I love you, Clara Ashford. Completely. Desperately. Forever. Good. She kissed him, not caring who watched. Because you're stuck with me now. They stayed in Cornwall for 3 more days. Victor's investigators traced the sabotage to a rival mining company, one with financial ties to Helena's family. The evidence was damning enough to file charges, shut down the competitor's operations, and secure Wheel Margaret's future. Clara spent those days working with the families, setting up a relief fund for the injured miners, organizing better safety protocols, listening to concerns about wages and working conditions. She took notes, made promises, and actually kept them. By the time they boarded the coach back to London, Clara had a new title among the Cornish workers, our Duchess. Not the Duchess. Theirs. The journey home was quieter than the journey out. Victor slept with his head on Clara's shoulder, finally allowing himself to rest. Clara watched the countryside pass, thinking about everything that had changed. She'd come to this marriage a frightened girl with no power and no future. She'd become a woman who'd faced down society, fought a vindictive rival, and crawled through collapsed mines to save lives. She'd stopped waiting to be rescued and become the rescuer. When they reached London, the house staff lined up to greet them, but their faces were different now. Not just respectful, proud. "Welcome home, Your Grace," Mrs. Hallowell said, and for the first time Clara heard genuine warmth in her voice. "We heard what you did in Cornwall. The whole city's heard. It wasn't just me. It was you, leading from the front, risking your life, saving 23 men." The housekeeper's eyes gleamed. "That's a duchess worthy of the Ashford name." Inside, newspapers covered the drawing room table. Clara picked one up, bracing for scandal. Instead, Duchess of Ashford leads daring mine rescue. Another, society girl becomes Cornish hero. And from the London Times, the same paper that had called her a gold digger weeks ago, the Duchess who refused to break. Clara read that headline 3 times, something fierce and proud swelling in her chest. "They're calling you a hero," Victor said, reading over her shoulder. "Every paper, every society column. You've completely changed the narrative." "We changed it. Together. Yes." He wrapped his arms around her from behind, rested his chin on her head. Together. A knock interrupted. Mrs. Hallowell entered, carrying a sealed letter. "This just arrived, Your Grace. From the magistrate's office." Victor opened it, scanned the contents, and smiled, sharp and satisfied. "Helena's trial date has been set, 3 weeks from now. And with the additional sabotage charges from Cornwall, she's looking at 20 years in prison, minimum." Clara should have felt triumph. Instead, she felt tired. "Is it finally over?" "Almost. One more fight, then we can start actually living our lives instead of just surviving them." Clara leaned back against him, letting his strength steady her. Outside the window, London glittered in the evening light. The same city that had whispered about her, mocked her, doubted her. She'd proven them all wrong, and she wasn't done yet. She wasn't done yet. Helena's trial began on a gray November morning, the kind where London's fog pressed against windows like something alive. Clara dressed carefully, deep blue silk, the Ashford diamonds, her hair styled with deliberate severity. She looked like a duchess going to war, because that's exactly what she was. Victor met her at the bottom of the stairs, offered his arm. "Ready?" "No, but we're going anyway." The courtroom was packed, every seat filled with society's elite, journalists crammed against the back wall, sketchers positioned to capture every moment for the morning papers. This wasn't just a trial, it was theater, entertainment, the final act of a scandal that had consumed London for months. Helena sat at the defendant's table in black silk, her lawyer beside her whispering urgently. She looked thinner than Clara remembered, face gaunt, but her eyes still blazed with that terrible intelligence. When she spotted Clara, her mouth curved into something that might have been a smile. Clara didn't look away. The judge entered. Lord Justice Pembroke, ancient and severe, known for harsh sentences and zero tolerance for lies. The bailiff called the court to order, and the prosecution began laying out its case. It was damning, document after forged document. Pemberton's full confession, read aloud in excruciating detail. Financial records showing Helena's payments to him. Testimony from the mine investigators about the sabotage in Cornwall traced back to companies Helena's family controlled. The evidence piled up like stones, crushing, undeniable. Helena's lawyer tried. He painted her as a woman scorned, driven to desperation by heartbreak. He claimed Victor had made promises, broken them, left her destitute and reputation ruined. Mrs. Voss is herself a victim, the lawyer argued. A woman of good family, led to believe she had a future with the Duke, then cast aside for a younger bride. Her actions, while misguided, were born of pain and betrayal. Clara felt Victor tense beside her. She squeezed his hand, kept her face neutral. Then the prosecution called their first witness. The Crown calls Clara Ashford, Duchess of Ashford, to the stand. Clara's heart stopped. They hadn't told her she'd be testifying. She looked at Victor, who nodded encouragement, then stood and walked to the witness box on legs that felt like water. The oath. The judge's stern gaze. Every eye in the courtroom watching her. The prosecutor, Mr. Thornton, who'd prepared her weeks ago, approached with careful courtesy. Your Grace, thank you for appearing today. I know this is difficult. It's necessary, Clara said, voice steadier than she felt. Indeed. Now, can you describe your first encounter with Mrs. Helena Voss? Clara recounted that morning in the drawing room. Helena's arrival, the easy intimacy with Victor, the way she dismissed Clara like furniture. The courtroom listened raptly. And how did that make you feel? Invisible, insignificant, like an intruder in my own home. Did Mrs. Voss continue to visit after that initial meeting? Yes. Multiple times. Always unannounced, always treating the house like she still belonged there. Objection, Helena's lawyer stood. Relevance? I'm establishing pattern of behavior, my lord. Mrs. Voss's refusal to accept the marriage as legitimate. Overruled. Continue. Thornton walked Clara through the confrontation at Lady Pemberton's ball, the newspaper articles, the forged letter supposedly from Pemberton. Each question was precise, building a picture of systematic harassment. Your Grace, in your own words, why do you believe Mrs. Voss did all this? Clara looked directly at Helena. Because she couldn't accept losing. She thought she'd secured Victor's affection, his future. When he married me instead, it shattered her plans. Rather than move on, she decided to destroy us both. Objection. Speculation about my client's mental state. Sustained. The witness will stick to facts. Let me rephrase, Thornton said. Your Grace, did Mrs. Voss ever explicitly state her intentions? Clara thought back to that moment at the luncheon, Helena's face twisted with rage. She said this isn't over when she was arrested, that she'd made sure of it. The mine sabotage happened days later. 23 men nearly died because she wanted revenge. The courtroom erupted in whispers. The judge banged his gavel. Order! Helena's lawyer stood for cross-examination. He was smooth, practiced, dangerous. Your Grace, you claim to have been invisible and insignificant, yet you managed to orchestrate the dismissal of a longtime servant, reorganize household accounts, and insert yourself into the Duke's business affairs. That hardly sounds insignificant. I did my job as Duchess. Managing the household is managing, yes, or perhaps seizing control. Tell me, Your Grace, how old are you? 19? 19, barely out of the schoolroom. Yet within weeks of marriage, you'd fired staff, altered financial systems, and made yourself indispensable. Some might call that calculating. Clara's temper flared. Some might call it competence. I dismissed one servant for theft, improved an inefficient accounting system, and did exactly what my husband asked me to do. If that threatens you, perhaps you should examine why. A few gasps. Even the judge's eyebrows rose. The lawyer tried again. Your father was deeply in debt. The Duke paid those debts as part of your marriage agreement. How convenient that you landed such a wealthy husband. Convenient? Clara's voice went cold. I was 18 years old, told I was being sold to clear my father's gambling debts, married to a stranger who barely spoke to me for weeks. There was nothing convenient about it. I made the best of an impossible situation. That's called survival, not calculation. Yet you're now positioned to inherit one of England's greatest fortunes. Objection! Victor was on his feet. Is there a question here, or is counsel simply harassing my wife? Sustained. Mr. Whitmore, ask proper questions or sit down. The lawyer shifted tactics. Your Grace, you claim Mrs. Voss harassed you. Yet you confronted her publicly at Lady Pemberton's ball, made accusations, essentially challenged her in front of London society. Isn't it possible you escalated this conflict? Clara met his eyes. I defended my marriage. Mrs. Voss was spreading lies, undermining my reputation, acting like she had more claim to my husband than I did. Standing up for myself isn't escalation, it's self-preservation. Some might say it was the act of a jealous young woman trying to eliminate competition. Then some would be wrong. Clara leaned forward. I didn't eliminate Mrs. Voss. She eliminated herself through forgery, conspiracy, and attempted murder. Those aren't the actions of a scorned lover. They're the actions of a criminal. The courtroom exploded. Journalists scribbled frantically. The judge banged his gavel repeatedly. When Clara stepped down, her hands were shaking, but her head was high. She'd held her ground, told the truth, refused to be intimidated. Victor caught her hand as she returned to her seat. You were magnificent. I was angry. That too. Still magnificent. The prosecution called more witnesses, the mine foremen, investigators, financial experts. Each testimony added weight to the case. By day's end, Helena's guilt seemed inescapable. But Clara knew trials were unpredictable, knew that sympathy could override evidence, that a good story could beat facts. They'd have to wait for the verdict. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Clara spent them pacing the hallway outside the courtroom, too anxious to sit, too wired to eat. Victor stayed beside her, steady and silent, his presence anchoring. What if they acquit her? Clara asked quietly. What if they believe she was just a heartbroken woman who made mistakes? They won't. The evidence is overwhelming. Evidence didn't stop the newspapers from calling me a gold digger. Facts don't always win. Victor pulled her close. Then we deal with it, together, like everything else. The bailiff appeared. Juries reached a verdict, courts reconvening. They filed back into the courtroom, now thick with tension. Helena sat motionless, face blank. Only her hands betrayed her fear, gripped together so tight, the knuckles showed white. Has the jury reached a verdict? The judge asked. The foreman stood. We have, my lord. In the matter of forgery and fraud? Guilty. In the matter of conspiracy to extort? Guilty. In the matter of attempted murder through mine sabotage? A pause. The entire courtroom held its breath. Guilty. Helena's composure shattered. She stood, voice shrill. This is absurd. I'm being persecuted for loving a man who used me, who... Mrs. Voss, sit down, the judge ordered. I won't. This is a farce, a conspiracy. They've all turned against me because she... Helena pointed at Clara, face twisted with hatred. That little nobody wormed her way into his bed and poisoned him against me. Mrs. Voss, 23 men could have died. Helena was screaming now, all pretense of dignity gone. And I hope they regret every moment I made them suffer. I hope... Bailiff, remove her. They dragged Helena from the courtroom, still screaming threats, still insisting she was the victim. Her voice echoed down the hallways until doors slammed, cutting it off. Silence fell. The judge gathered his papers, cleared his throat. Helena Voss, you have been found guilty of multiple serious crimes. The court sentences you to 25 years imprisonment with no possibility of parole. Furthermore, your assets are to be liquidated to pay restitution to the Duke of Ashford and the families of the miners endangered by your sabotage. You are hereby remanded to custody. This court is adjourned. The gavel fell. It was over. Clara sat frozen, unable to process it. 25 years. Helena would be an old woman when she was released, if she lived that long. The threat was ended. The nightmare was finished. Victor's arm came around her shoulders. It's done, Clara. She can't hurt us anymore. I know, I just... She turned to face him, tears finally breaking free. I didn't expect to feel sad about it. She brought it on herself. I know that too. But she was still a person, a desperate, cruel person, but... Clara wiped her eyes. She could have chosen differently. At any point, she could have walked away, moved on, but she couldn't let go. Some people can't. They hold on to grudges until it destroys them. Victor brushed hair from her face. You're crying for the woman she could have been, not the woman she became. Is that weak? It's human, and it's why I love you. They left the courtroom through a side exit, avoiding the journalists mobbed at the front. But news traveled fast. By the time their carriage reached Ashford House, the evening papers were already on the streets. Voss convicted. Duchess vindicated justice for the Cornish miners. The trial that shocked London. Mrs. Hallowell met them at the door, actually smiling. The whole city's talking, Your Graces, saying you stood up there and told the truth without flinching, that you faced down her lawyer like a proper duchess. I just answered questions, Clara said, exhausted. You did more than that. You showed them who you really are. The housekeeper's voice softened. We're proud, Your Grace. All of us. That night, Clara and Victor dined alone in his study. Their study now, Clara realized. She'd gradually moved her work in here until their desks sat side by side, their books intermixed on the shelves, their lives completely intertwined. What happens now? She asked, echoing the question she'd asked weeks ago in Cornwall. Now we live. Victor set down his fork, reached for her hand. We stop surviving crises and actually build a life together. Maybe travel. You've never seen the continent. Maybe modernize the Cornwall estate, make it safer for the workers. Maybe, he paused. Maybe start a family. If you want. Clara's breath caught. You want children? With you? Yes. Not immediately. You're 19. We have time. But someday, little girls with your courage, little boys with your sharp mind. His thumb traced circles on her palm. A future. A real one. I'd like that. Clara smiled through fresh tears. All of it. The travel, the improvements, the family. Building something that's ours, not just surviving what we inherited. Then that's what we'll do. He pulled her close, kissed her slowly. Together. A knock interrupted. Sarah peeked in, face apologetic. Sorry, Your Graces, but there's someone here to see you. Says it's urgent. At this hour? She insisted, Your Grace. Says she's come from Cornwall. Clara and Victor exchanged glances. Clara nodded. Send her in. The woman who entered was Mrs. Price, the pregnant woman from the mine, now visibly more advanced. She curtsied awkwardly, clutching a bundle wrapped in cloth. Your Grace, Your Graces, I'm sorry to intrude, but I had to come, to say thank you properly. Mrs. Price, you've already thanked us. Not like this. She unwrapped the bundle, revealing a blanket, hand-knitted, intricate, beautiful. The women, we all made this together. Every wife and mother and daughter from Wheel Margaret. Each of us did a section. It's for you, Your Grace, for when you have your first baby. Clara's throat closed. She took the blanket with shaking hands, feeling the love woven into every stitch. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. You saved our men, our families, our futures. Mrs. Price's eyes gleamed. We wanted you to know. You're one of us now, properly. And when your baby comes, they'll be wrapped in the love of every Cornish woman whose husband came home because of you. She left before Clara could find words. Clara stood holding the blanket, crying openly now, while Victor wrapped his arms around her from behind. They love you, he murmured. Cornwall, London, the household staff, everyone who really knows you, loves you. I didn't do anything special, just what needed doing. That's exactly why they love you. You don't act like nobility pretending to care. You actually care. You get your hands dirty, you take risks, you fight for people. He turned her to face him. You've changed this family, Clara. Made it better. Made me better. You were never as bad as you thought. Maybe, but I was closed off, cold, afraid to feel anything. You broke through that, forced me to be human again. He cupped her face. I was existing. You taught me how to live. Clara kissed him, deep and fierce and full of promise. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, she said, So let's live, really live. No more hiding, no more walls, no more just surviving. Deal. Winter came to London, and with it, change. The scandal of Helena's trial faded into memory, replaced by new gossip, fresh scandals. Society moved on, as it always did. But Clara's reputation had transformed. No longer the suspicious nobody who'd married above her station, but the duchess who'd faced down corruption, saved minors, and stood her ground in court. Invitations flooded in. Not the perfunctory obligatory kind, but genuine requests for her presence, her opinions, her partnership. Women who'd sneered at her now sought her advice. Men who'd dismissed her now treated her as an equal. Clara accepted some invitations, declined others. She was learning the power of selectivity, that she didn't owe everyone her time, that her worth wasn't measured by social approval. She also threw herself into the Cornwall improvements. Working with Victor and the engineers, they redesigned the mine's safety systems, improved ventilation, established emergency protocols. Clara insisted on fair wages, reasonable hours, and a fund for families of injured workers. "You're going to bankrupt us," Victor teased, reviewing her proposals. "I'm going to make us humane. There's a difference." The changes cost money, but earned loyalty. Production at wheel. Margaret actually increased. Workers who felt valued worked harder, stayed longer, spread word that the Ashford mines were the best in Cornwall. Other mine owners noticed. Some mocked, called Victor soft, said Clara was ruining him with sentiment. Others quietly adopted similar reforms. Clara also discovered she had a gift for mediation. When disputes arose between workers and management, she could see both sides, find compromises that satisfied everyone. Word spread. Other estates began requesting her consultation. "You're becoming a power in your own right," Victor observed one evening, watching her review correspondence from 3 different mining operations. "I'm being useful, that's all." "You're changing how business is done in an entire industry. That's considerably more than useful." Clara set down her papers, studied her husband. He looked different than the cold stranger she'd married, relaxed, open, genuinely happy. The transformation was mutual. "Victor, can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Do you regret it? Marrying me instead of choosing someone you actually loved?" He was quiet for a moment. Then, "I regret how we started. The transaction, the coldness, the pain I caused you. But marrying you? Never. Not for a second. Even though it was forced? It was forced on both of us. But what we've built from it, that's a choice. Every day I choose you, choose us." He moved to kneel beside her chair. "Clara, you're the best decision I never knew I was making. You've given me purpose beyond profit, shown me there's more to life than protecting myself from feeling. You've made me human again. You were always human, just scared, terrified, of becoming my father, of being hurt, of losing control." He took her hands. "But loving you is worth the risk. All of it." Clara pulled him up into her arms, and they stayed like that as darkness fell over London. 2 people who'd started as strangers, become partners, and finally found something neither had been looking for. Love. Real, earned, chosen love. Us. Spring arrived with crocuses in the garden and news that made Clara's heart stop. "You're pregnant," Dr. Brennan said, smiling. "About 6 weeks along, I'd estimate." Clara sat in stunned silence. Victor, beside her, looked equally shocked. "You're certain?" he asked. "Quite certain, Your Grace. Congratulations to you both." After the doctor left, Clara and Victor stared at each other. "We're having a baby," Clara said slowly, testing the words. "We're having a baby." Victor's face split into the widest smile she'd ever seen. "We're going to be parents." The reality crashed over them both. Victor whooped, and swept Clara into his arms, spinning her until she laughed and begged to be put down. "Careful! You'll make me sick!" Sorry. He set her down gently, hands on her waist. "Are you happy? Scared? Both?" "Both. Definitely both." Clara pressed a hand to her still flat stomach. "There's a person growing in there. A tiny person who's going to be ours. Our child. Half you, half me." Victor's eyes gleamed. Already the luckiest child in England. The news spread through the household like wildfire. Mrs. Hallowell actually hugged Clara, A brief, awkward embrace that spoke volumes. Sarah cried. Cook insisted on making special meals to keep Clara's strength up. The whole household is conspiring to fatten me up, Clara complained, eyeing her third breakfast pastry. Let them fuss. You're carrying the Ashford air. That's permission to be spoiled. Victor stole a bite of her pastry. Besides, you look beautiful. I look the same as yesterday. You look happy. That's beautiful. Clara wrote to Mrs. Price in Cornwall, thanking her again for the blanket and sharing the news. The response came within a week. A letter signed by every woman from the mine, promising prayers and well wishes, and an open invitation to bring the baby to Cornwall when it was old enough to travel. They want to meet our child, Clara said, tears threatening again. They consider themselves family. They are family, the one we've chosen. Victor wrapped his arms around her from behind, hands resting on her stomach. This baby's going to grow up knowing they're loved by more than just us, by Cornwall, by London, by everyone whose life you've touched. That's a lot of pressure for someone who isn't even born yet. They'll handle it. They're yours after all. The pregnancy progressed smoothly. Clara worked through the early months, only slowing when Dr. Brennan insisted. She attended society functions, managed household affairs, continued her consulting work on mine safety. You're supposed to be resting, Victor said, finding her at her desk reviewing proposals at 8 months pregnant. I'm sitting. This is resting. This is working. There's a difference. I'll rest when I'm dead. Until then, I have things to accomplish. But she softened at his worried expression. I'm fine, Victor, truly. The baby's healthy, I'm healthy, and staying active is good for both of us. He knew better than to argue with her by now. The baby arrived on a warm June evening after 12 hours of labor that tested Clara's courage more than any confrontation with Helena ever had. I can't do this, she gasped between contractions. It's too much. Yes, you can. You've done harder things. Victor held her hand, let her squeeze until his bones ground together. You faced down society, saved minors, testified in court. You can do this. Those things didn't feel like being torn in half. Fair point, but you're still doing it anyway. And she did. With a final scream that probably woke half of London, Clara brought her daughter into the world. The baby was tiny, red-faced, furious at being born. She had Clara's dark hair and Victor's gray eyes and lungs that worked perfectly. She's beautiful, Victor breathed, tears streaming down his face. She's perfect. She's loud, Clara said, exhausted and exhilarated. But yes, perfect. They named her Eleanor Margaret Ashford, Eleanor for Victor's mother, Margaret for the mine that had nearly killed them both but ultimately brought them together. News of the birth spread rapidly. Gifts arrived from Cornwall, hand-carved toys, knitted blankets, letters of congratulation. London society sent flowers and formal notes. Even Lady Pemberton wrote, admitting she'd misjudged Clara and wishing the family well. Clara spent those first weeks in a haze of feeding and sleeping and staring at her daughter in wonder. This tiny person was theirs, their future, their proof that love could grow from the most unlikely beginnings. What do you think she'll be like? Clara asked one night, watching Eleanor sleep in her cradle. Stubborn, brave, too smart for her own good. Victor smiled, like her mother. She'll also be kind, strategic, good at hiding his feelings until he can't anymore. Clara leaned against him, like her father. Heaven help us if she gets both our personalities. Heaven help everyone else. She's going to change the world. Without question. They sat in comfortable silence, watching their daughter breathe, marveling at what they'd created. Not just Eleanor, but this. A marriage that had started as a cage and become a sanctuary. A partnership built on crisis and forged in fire. Clara, Victor's voice was quiet. Thank you. For what? For giving me this. A real family. A real life, for being stubborn enough to make this marriage work when I was too afraid to try. He kissed her temple. For everything. Clara turned to face him, saw the love in his eyes. Open, unguarded, absolute. We gave each other this, both of us. Together. Together, he echoed. Eleanor stirred, made a small sound. Clara lifted her from the cradle, settled her between them. The three of them, a family, imperfect and hard-won and real. Outside, London slept. Inside Ashford House, a new chapter was beginning. The girl who'd been sold to save her father's debts had become a duchess, a hero, a wife, and now a mother. She'd been broken and rebuilt herself stronger. She'd been caged and torn open the door. She'd been nobody and proved herself somebody through courage, intelligence, and stubborn refusal to surrender. And the man who'd been afraid to feel anything had learned to love without reservation, to trust without fear, to live instead of merely existing. They'd started as strangers bound by obligation. They'd become partners by choice. And now they were a family by love. The gilded cage was gone. What remained was freedom, hard-earned, battle-tested, and completely theirs. Clara looked at her husband, at her daughter, at the life they'd built from desperation and duty, and she smiled. This was worth fighting for, worth every terrifying moment, every impossible choice, every risk that had brought them here. This was home. This was love. This was everything. Years later, when Eleanor was old enough to ask about her parents' story, Clara would tell her the truth, the debts, the arranged marriage, the coldness that almost destroyed them. But she'd also tell her about the courage it took to stay, the work it took to build love from obligation, the strength required to transform a cage into a home. "So you didn't love each other at first?" Eleanor would ask, eyes wide. "No," Clara would admit, "but we chose to love each other, every day. That's more powerful than any fairy tale." And Eleanor, daughter of a duchess who'd changed an industry and a duke who'd learned to feel, would grow up understanding that the best love stories aren't about destiny or chance. They're about choice and courage and refusing to break when the world demands it, just like her mother before her.